Tonight, we explore the most unlikely partnership in the wizarding world. What if the two men who hated each other most, Sirius Black and Severus Snape, were forced to raise Harry Potter together? What happens when grief and guilt become roommates, when the boy who survived needs two fathers who can barely survive each other? And what does Harry become when he is shaped not by the cold indifference of the Dursleys, but by the furious, combustible, occasionally devastating love of two men who would die for him, and who express that love primarily by arguing about it? In this version of the story, Harry Potter does not grow up in a cupboard. He grows up in the middle of a war that ended before he could remember it, raised by its two most complicated survivors, and the boy he becomes is entirely different and entirely himself. The argument started before they agreed. This is important. The argument that would define the next 17 years of both their lives began not in the aftermath of the decision, but in the moment before it, in the ruins of the cottage at Godric's Hollow on the night of October 31st, 1981, when Sirius Black arrived on a motorbike and Severus Snape was already there. Snape had come from Godric's Hollow. He had arrived at the ruins drawn by the same desperate, irrational impulse that had taken him to Lily's door every time there was bad news during the war. The impulse that said, "Go, go now. She might need you," and had found the cottage collapsed and James dead at the foot of the stairs and Lily dead at the door of the nursery and Harry alive and screaming in his crib with a lightning bolt wound on his forehead. He had sat in the rubble beside Lily's body for a long time. He did not know how long. Long enough that the moon had moved. Then he had picked up the baby. Harry had been screaming, was still screaming with the absolute undifferentiated fury of a child who has had the worst night of his small life and who does not yet have words for what a worst night is, but who has lungs that function and who intends to deploy them. "Shh," Snape said. He did not say it gently. He did not have it in him in that moment to be gentle. He said it the way he said most things, precisely as a statement of what was required. Harry did not shh. He screamed louder. "You survived," Snape said. "That is more than your mother managed. The least you can do is be quiet about it." This was a terrible thing to say to a 15-month-old. Harry could not process it. He screamed, and Snape held him, and the ruins of Godric's Hollow breathed around them. He was still holding Harry when Sirius arrived. The motorbike landed on what had been the front garden. Sirius came through the ruins at speed, the way Sirius did everything. Too fast, insufficient attention to obstacles, propelled by the particular kinetic energy of a man who was either going to stop the bad thing or arrive too late, and that was not going to be for lack of trying. He stopped when he saw Snape. "What?" Sirius said. He was not asking a question. He was producing a sound that existed in the space before words, in the register where the worst possibilities live before they have been confirmed. "She's dead," Snape said. "They're both dead. The child survived." Sirius looked at Harry, at the screaming, dark-haired, lightning-scarred baby in the arms of Severus Snape, who was holding him with the specific posture of someone who has not held many babies and who is managing on theory alone. "Give him to me," Sirius said. "No, Snape, he is not yours too. He's my godson. Give him to me." Snape looked at Sirius, at the grey eyes which were usually calculating and which were currently devastated, which was a quality Snape had not previously identified in Sirius Black's emotional range. He handed Harry over. Not because Sirius had the right of it. Snape's opinion of Sirius Black's rights to anything had never been high, but because Harry had, in the process of being transferred, grabbed a fistful of Snape's robes and was clinging to them and was not, consequently, screaming anymore. He was looking at Snape with the wide, wet eyes of a child who has been through something terrible and who has latched on to the nearest available adult. Sirius took him. Harry made a sound of protest. then settled because Sirius was warm and substantial and smelled like motorcycle exhaust, and something else that Harry would later understand was the specific smell of the Black family. Distinctive and slightly aristocratic and entirely real. Sirius held Harry and looked at the ruins and at Snape standing among them and at the specific arrangement of the night. Lily gone, James gone, Peter run, himself about to pursue Peter and Dumbledore already arriving from somewhere in the distance, and everything accelerating toward a future that would be, for Sirius Black, 12 years of Azkaban. Except Snape was watching him, with the expression Snape used when he was calculating. Not hostile exactly. Too focused to be hostile. The face of someone who has identified a problem and is solving it in real time. "You're going to go after Pettigrew," Snape said. "Yes, and Dumbledore will have you arrested, because Pettigrew will have arranged to appear to die and you will appear to be the culprit, and there will be no one to say otherwise." Sirius looked at him. "Are you telling me not to go?" "I'm telling you what will happen if you do." Snape looked at Harry. "And what will happen to the child?" A pause. "Dumbledore will take him," Sirius said. "Dumbledore will find him somewhere safe. Dumbledore will take him to Petunia Dursley, who hates magic, who hated Lily, who will raise the boy in circumstances that I would not consider adequate for a garden gnome. How do you? Because I know Dumbledore. He thinks in terms of magical protection, not human welfare. The blood protection tied to Petunia's blood will be the primary consideration. The quality of the child's life will be secondary, at best." Sirius looked at Harry, who was looking at Snape. "What are you suggesting?" Sirius said. "I'm not suggesting anything," Snape said. "I'm describing a situation. The situation is, you can go after Pettigrew and lose the next 12 years and condemn this child to the Dursleys. Or you can stay and establish a legal claim to the child before Dumbledore can act. A legal claim. Me, you are the godfather. Formally, legally, there is documentation. James and Lily filed the paperwork 3 years ago. And you know this, because I was there when they filed it. They asked me to be a witness." A pause. A very short pause. I signed it. The revelation sat in the ruins of Godric's Hollow. Sirius looked at Snape. Snape looked back. "You signed my godfather paperwork," Sirius said. "I was there. They asked. I signed. Why didn't you just leave?" "Because Lily asked me to stay." A silence. "Right," Sirius said. He looked at Harry. He looked at the ruins. He looked at the approaching light that was Dumbledore, coming down the lane. He made a decision. "We're both taking him," Sirius said. "You have standing as a former friend and witness. I have standing as godfather. Between us, there's enough to contest Dumbledore placing him with the Dursleys if we're both making the claim. I have no interest in 'yes, you do.'" Sirius's voice was quiet. The devastation had organized itself into something more functional. "You came here for a reason. You're standing in this ruin for a reason. You're telling me about legal claims and Dursleys and Dumbledore's decision-making for a reason. And the reason is her." He did not say Lily's name. He didn't need to. And that means you're not going anywhere either. Snape looked at Harry, who was still looking at Snape, with the specific, unnerving, uncanny attention of a baby who does not understand what is happening, but who has identified, with the infallible animal instinct of the very young, which adult in the vicinity is going to matter most. "This is going to be intolerable," Snape said. "Absolutely," Sirius agreed. "We cannot stand each other. We have extensive documentation of that fact. The child will grow up in an atmosphere of constant conflict. He'll grow up," Sirius said, "which is more than he'll do with the Dursleys." Dumbledore arrived, surveyed the scene, took in Sirius and Harry in Sirius's arms, and Snape standing beside them with the expression of a man who has made a terrible decision and who is absolutely committed to it. "Sirius," Dumbledore said. "I was coming to take Harry. I have arrangements. We have a counteroffer," Sirius said. And so it began. The legal process took 3 weeks. In wizarding terms, this was extraordinarily fast. In Sirius and Snape terms, it was 3 weeks of the most sustained cooperative effort either of them had ever undertaken, which produced an arrangement that was functional, documented, and mutually intolerable, and which was approved by the Vizsgamot in a session that several members described afterward as the most entertaining they had attended in 20 years. The arrangement was this. Harry would live with Sirius, who had been granted formal guardianship as godfather. Snape would have legal standing as co-guardian, responsible for Harry's magical education, medical decisions, and the specific category of situations in which Sirius's judgment could not be trusted. This last category was Snape's addition. He had drafted it in language so precise and comprehensive that Sirius had spent 20 minutes arguing with him about whether situations in which Sirius's judgment demonstrably fails to account for consequences was actionable language. "It's not a crime," Sirius said. "No," Snape said. "It's a legal category. There's a difference. What's the difference? The difference is that I can invoke it, which I will. Regularly, you're going to use legal language to overrule me in arguments. I'm going to use legal language to overrule you in decisions that will affect the child." "Yes, that's efficient," Snape said, "given your history with consequences." The Vizsgamot approved it. Dumbledore, who had watched the proceedings with the expression of a man who cannot decide whether he is witnessing a disaster or something considerably more interesting, signed the relevant documents and added, in the margin of his copy, "This will either be the best decision or the worst one." Possibly both. He was not wrong. The early years. Harry's first clear memory was of an argument about porridge. Not the substance of the argument, he was 2, and the substance of most arguments at 2 is inaccessible to later analysis. But the texture of it, 2 voices, one low and precise, and the other warm and aggrieved, arguing about something with the passionate investment that adults, puzzlingly, applied to things that did not seem to Harry to matter very much. "The child is not eating porridge," Snape said. "The child loves porridge," Sirius said. "Harry, don't you love porridge?" Harry, who was at that moment attempting to wear the porridge rather than eat it, did not reply. "He is wearing the porridge," Snape said. "This is not consumption. This is application. He's exploring texture. He has oats in his hair. That's fine. It is not fine. He will dry and the oats will become structural. I will need to wash his hair. Again, I can wash his hair. The last time you washed his hair, you used your own shampoo. His hair was standing vertical for 4 hours. That's because it's good shampoo. It adds volume. He is 2 years old. He does not require volume." This was a representative exchange. Harry grew up in the specific atmosphere of 2 people who disagreed about everything, and who were, in the disagreement, absolutely committed to him. The commitment was not always articulate. It was not always warm. But it was total. And total commitment, even when expressed primarily through arguments about porridge and shampoo, produces a specific kind of security in a child that is different from any other kind. Harry felt safe. Always, even when the arguments were loud, and they were frequently loud, he felt safe. Because the arguments were not about him, even when they appeared to be about him. The arguments were about how best to take care of him, and the fact that 2 people were arguing about the best way to take care of him meant that being taken care of was the fixed point around which everything else revolved. Number 12. Grimmauld Place. The house was Sirius's. inherited from the Black family with all its gothic gloom and dark magic, and the portrait of Walburga Black on the wall that screamed at Snape every time he arrived, and that screamed at Sirius every time he moved. "She screams at everyone," Sirius said. "She screams at me specifically," Snape said. "The volume and the content are specific to me. She called me." He stopped. "I will not repeat what she called me. Greasy-haired, I said I would not repeat it. She calls me worse. She calls you a blood traitor. That is an insult to your family connections. What she calls me is an insult to my existence." Sirius looked at the portrait, then at Snape. The expression on his face was something that he would have difficulty explaining and that he would never explain aloud. The dawning, deeply uncomfortable recognition that Walburga Black's particular brand of hatred, which Sirius had grown up with and which he understood intellectually was a product of the ideology that had shaped the family, was targeting Snape on a register that it did not target Sirius. "I'll put a curtain over it," Sirius said. "Thank you," Snape said. His voice was flat. But it was the flat of someone who has been surprised and does not wish to show it. The curtain went up. The portrait screamed at the curtain instead. This was less targeted, but no less loud. Harry, watching from the hallway, decided that the portrait was less interesting than the way Sirius had looked at Snape. Adults did things with their faces that were more interesting than whatever they said. He filed this for later. The specific architecture of their household. Sirius lived at Grimmauld Place. He slept late and ate badly and had a motorbike in the kitchen that he was ostensibly repairing, but which Harry suspected was more accurately described as a project that Sirius kept because it gave him something to do with his hands when the nights were long. He laughed loudly. He cried sometimes, at night, in ways he didn't know Harry could hear. He told Harry stories about James and Lily. Real stories. The specific and irreverent and loving stories of someone who knew people rather than about them. "Your dad once turned Snape's cauldron into a hat," Sirius told Harry when Harry was 4. "What happened?" "Snape wore it for 6 hours before he could get it off. Your dad thought he'd fixed it. He hadn't fixed it." "Was Snape angry?" "Snape is always angry. This was a more specifically focused anger." "Did he do something back?" Sirius grinned. The grin was the one that Harry associated with memories, with a specific quality of someone reliving something that was both hilarious and painful. "He put something in your dad's cauldron. I never found out what." But James spent a week speaking exclusively in questions. Every sentence ended in a question mark. He couldn't stop. "It was?" Sirius's grin softened. "It was very James." Harry sat with this. "Do you miss him?" "Every day." "Does Snape miss him?" Sirius was quiet for a moment. "Snape misses your mum," he said carefully, which is a different thing, but it means roughly the same amount of missing. This was the most precise and honest thing Sirius ever said about Snape. Harry filed it alongside the look at the portrait. Snape did not live at Grimmauld Place. Snape had rooms at Hogwarts, which was where he spent his professional life, and an occasional presence at Grimmauld Place that operated on a schedule that was technically Thursday evenings and practically whenever something required his attention, which was roughly 4 days a week, because something always required his attention, and the something was usually called Sirius. Harry's relationship with Snape was different from his relationship with Sirius, not lesser. Different, Sirius was the warmth, imperfect, unpredictable, occasionally overwhelming warmth. The warmth of someone who felt everything at full volume and who did not know how to modulate it. Snape was the structure. The person who showed up on Thursday with information Harry needed, with the specific, focused attention of someone who had prepared. "Your potion is wrong," Snape said, when Harry was 6 and attempting to brew something he'd read about in a book he'd found in the Grimmauld Place library. "I followed the instructions," Harry said. "You followed the instructions as written. The instructions as written contain an error." What does the colour of the potion tell you? Harry looked at the potion. It was orange. The book said it should be amber. It's the wrong shade, Harry said. More precisely, too orange. It needs to be more yellow. And to achieve that, less pomegranate? The pomegranate was supposed to add warmth to the colour, but too much made it good, Snape said. He did not say it effusively. He said it the way he said all useful things, flat and factual and meaning it completely. Harry reduced the pomegranate. The potion shifted toward amber. There, Snape said. Harry looked at the potion. Then at Snape. How did you know it was wrong from across the room? Because I have been brewing potions for 30 years and colour is primary diagnostic information. You will know it too, eventually, if you develop the habit of looking before you adjust. What if I'm wrong about what I'm looking at? Then you will make an error, analyse it, and not make it again. That is how learning works. Harry thought about this. Is that how you learned? That is how everyone learns. I was simply faster than most. Were you really? A pause. The pause had a quality. Yes, Snape said. I was. Sirius says you were the best in your year. Another pause. Different quality. Sirius said that? He said it when he was telling me about the cauldron hat thing. He said even your hat was better than most people's potions. Snape looked at him. Something moved across Snape's face that Harry had learned to identify. A movement in the muscles around the eyes. Very small, the most controlled possible expression of something that the rest of his face was not going to permit. The cauldron hat incident, Snape said, was not a demonstration of my skill. No, but Sirius said. I heard what Sirius said. Sirius has a tendency to recontextualize the past in ways that are not always accurate. Was it inaccurate? Technically, no. In spirit, it contained certain omissions. What omissions? Snape looked at him, at the 5-year-old who was looking back with the eyes that were lilies and the questions that were relentlessly his own. The cauldron hat, Snape said, was impressive as a transfiguration. Transfiguration is not potions. I object to being remembered primarily for an incident that demonstrates someone else's talent. Harry considered this. That's fair, he said. Snape looked at him again. The muscle movement. Yes, he said, it is. The years at Grimmauld Place were not quiet years. They were not the years of the Dursleys, no cupboards, no deprivation, no systematic small cruelties designed to shrink a child down to manageable size. But they were not uniformly easy either. Sirius carried things from Azkaban, not always visibly, but the Dementor damage was structural. It lived in the architecture of how Sirius processed dark days, how he responded to certain sounds, how the nights sometimes went wrong in ways that were not predictable. He was not a man who had come through 12 years of soul consumption without something being reorganized. Harry understood this before he had words for it. He understood it the way children understand things about the adults they love, not analytically, not with a framework, but with the animal precision of someone for whom another person's state is survival information. When Sirius was having a bad night, Harry stayed close, but not too close. Talked about small things. Read out loud from whatever book he was working through. Because Sirius found the sound of Harry's voice organising, and because Harry had worked this out at age 5 without being told. When Sirius was having a good day, and the good days were genuinely good, brilliantly good, the specific brightness of someone who has survived something terrible and who is not taking the light for granted, Harry went everywhere with him. On the motorbike, to the leaky cauldron for lunch, to the Quidditch pitch that one of Sirius's old school friends had behind his house, where Sirius taught Harry to fly at age 5, and where Harry discovered that the broom and the sky and the feeling of wind were the closest thing to uncomplicated joy that he had encountered. You're a natural, Sirius said, watching Harry circle the pitch. You're biased, Harry said, from 30 feet up. I'm your guardian. I'm required to be biased. but you're still a natural. Snape arrived for this. The Snape arrivals were often like this, timed, Harry suspected, not by coincidence. Snape monitored things without appearing to monitor them. He would show up the day after a difficult night. He would arrive when Harry had been working on something for a week. He would appear 3 days running during the period when Sirius was cycling through the particular grey flatness that was not exactly depression but was the Azkaban residue at its most present. Snape watched Harry flying. His face was doing the controlled thing. Then he said to Sirius he's favouring his right side. "I know," Sirius said. "I've been working with him on it." "Has he improved?" "Yes. He overcorrects now instead of undercorrecting, which is better. Overcorrecting is adjustable. Undercorrecting is structural." That's what I thought. They stood side by side on the edge of the pitch. Two men who despised each other, watching Harry fly, and the despising was present, and so was something else that was not the opposite of despising, but that existed alongside it. The specific, parallel, non-communicating investment of people who are pointed at the same thing. Harry landed, looked at them both. "Snape," he said. "Did you see?" "I saw," Snape said. "Your right side." "I know. Sirius has been telling me. And yet, I'm working on it. Work faster." Harry grinned. Snape's expression did the thing. "Can you fly?" Harry asked Snape. "I can fly. You're not on a broom. I have no interest in demonstrating this currently. Is it because Sirius is here?" Sirius made a sound. Snape looked at Harry with the expression Harry privately categorized as "You are pressing on something, child. My choice not to fly is unrelated to Black's presence," Snape said. "Really?" "Yes. Then why won't you fly?" "Because I am here to observe your technique, not to be observed. And because my robes are unsuitable for Sirius flies in robes," Harry said. "Sirius's relationship with appropriate attire is a documented ongoing concern." "Hey," Sirius said. "I'm not wrong. You're rude. I'm accurate." Harry sat down on the grass between them. The pitch was quiet. The afternoon light was long and gold, and the kind of light that makes even Grimmauld Place feel less like a Gothic monument to aristocratic darkness, and more like a place where people might actually choose to live. "Could you too?" Harry said. "Not do that for just a minute?" They both looked at him. "Do what?" Sirius said. "The thing where you're rude about each other, but actually you're both watching me fly because you both care about whether I overcorrect, and you'll never just say that." A silence. "The child is perceptive," Snape said. "Eventually takes after Lily," Sirius said. "Yes," Snape said. This was the most direct acknowledgement that had passed between them in 3 years. Harry filed it carefully. Hogwarts, the letter arrived on Harry's 11th birthday. Harry opened it at breakfast with Sirius across the table and Snape having appeared, on no specific schedule, approximately 40 minutes earlier. "Hogwarts," Harry said. "Obviously," Snape said. "It's a formal letter," Harry said, like they don't know. "The letter system operates independently of prior knowledge. You would receive that letter regardless of what anyone in this room already knows about your magical status." "Which is what exactly?" Harry said. "Considerable," Sirius said. "We've tested you twice." 3 times, Snape said. "You tested him without telling me?" "I tested him because you were at the Quidditch match and the occasion presented itself." He scored in the 92nd percentile for his age cohort in charm responsiveness. The 92nd, Sirius looked at Harry. "You didn't tell me that." "You didn't ask," Harry said. "I didn't know to ask. Snape told me not to mention it until there was a relevant occasion." Sirius looked at Snape. "You told him to keep it from me." "I told him to wait for the appropriate context." "This is the appropriate context. He's 11. Children tell their parents things." I'm his co-guardian, not his. Snape stopped. Something complicated happened on his face. I am a co-guardian, not a parent. The distinction matters for the legal context. It matters for more than the legal context, Sirius said quietly. Another silence. Harry ate his toast and watched the adults manage emotions they did not know he could read. He was, by now, extremely good at reading them. I'm excited, Harry said. To go. Is that all right? Both of them looked at him. Yes, Sirius said. Obviously, Snape said. Will it be weird? Harry said. Having Snape as my teacher. Professor Snape, Snape said. At school. Outside school you're... Harry paused. He had not, in 11 years, arrived at a word for Snape outside the context of school. Guardian was the legal word. The accurate word, as distinct from the legal one, was more complicated. We'll address the terminology question later, Snape said. The relevant point is that at Hogwarts you will address me as Professor. My behaviour toward you in class will not reflect our arrangement. I cannot permit it to. Other students would perceive it as preferential treatment and they would be correct. So you'll be mean to me? I will be consistent, consistently exacting, which may, from the perspective of a student accustomed to the domestic context, feel mean. He means yes, Sirius said. He'll be mean, but it won't be personal. It will be professional, Snape corrected. That's a more sophisticated version of mean. It is a different thing entirely. Harry, when Snape is, I am sitting here, Snape said. When Professor Snape is exacting, Sirius said, carefully, at school, it's because the professional context requires it, not because of anything you've done. And if it ever crosses a line, you come to me. And if it doesn't cross a line, Snape added, you apply yourself harder and stop looking for external reasons for your own insufficiencies. Harry looked between them. I'll do both, he said. Good, they said simultaneously. Then they looked at each other with the expression they always had when they said things at the same time. Harry ate his toast, smiled into it. The sorting. The hat came down over Harry's ears and found a mind that was complicated, not in the way first-year minds were usually complicated. In the way that minds are complicated when they have been exposed, from their earliest memory to two entirely different modes of understanding the world. Oh, the hat said, you're the Potter boy. Yes, Harry thought. I know your guardians, both of them. I sorted them. I know. Gryffindor and Slytherin, the defining rivalry of this school, and you've been raised by both of them, which means you are a mess, Harry offered. I was going to say thoroughly confused by house politics. Sirius says Slytherins are self-interested. Sirius would. Snape says Gryffindors are reckless, also not without foundation. They're both right, aren't they? They're both partial, the hat said, as most people are about things they feel strongly about. Now, where to put you? You have the courage, genuine, tested. You have the ambition, not for power, but for understanding. You have the loyalty. It is enormous, actually, considerably larger than you know how to express. And you have the cunning, not Slytherin cunning, not exactly, something different. The specific tactical intelligence of someone who has been navigating two very different people for 11 years. So all of them, Harry said, in different proportions. Yes, where do I fit? The question, the hat said, is not where you fit. The question is what you need. What you need is a community that will challenge the parts of you that your guardians can't. Sirius gives you warmth. Snape gives you structure. What you don't have is peers, people your own age. People who will make demands on you that are not adult demands. Gryffindor would give me that. So would any house. But Gryffindor will give you the specific kind. the rushing in kind, the loyalty above all kind, the house that will both exasperate you and make you feel more at home than anywhere except Grimmauld Place. How do you know about Grimmauld Place? I sorted Sirius Black. I know about Grimmauld Place, Gryffindor. Harry walked to the Gryffindor table, sat down. A red-haired boy across the table grinned at him. Harry Potter, Ron Weasley said. My brothers told me about you. Not the famous thing, the other thing. What other thing? The thing about the people who look after you. They're Sirius Black and Snape. Professor Snape. Fred and George said that's the funniest thing that has ever happened in the history of this school. Harry looked at him. They're not wrong. Ron's grin widened. Are they actually terrible all the time? To each other. But you're fine, Harry said. Somehow that's brilliant, Ron said. That's completely brilliant. The Hogwarts years began with the particular quality of a life that has been prepared for rather than arrived at by surprise. Harry knew about magic. He had been in the presence of it since before he could remember. Snape's potions on the Thursday visits, Sirius's casual and occasionally catastrophic casual spell work, the portraits at Grimmauld Place, the kitchen that cleaned itself with varying degrees of success. He was not, unlike most Muggle-raised children, encountering a new world. He was encountering the formal version of a world he had always lived in. What was new was the peers. The specific, uncharted territory of other children. Hermione Granger sat beside him in the library the third day of term with the specific intensity of someone who has identified a resource and is maximizing it. You were raised by Sirius Black and Professor Snape, she said. Yes, together, that is the arrangement. How does that work? Harry considered the question. Badly, he said. But consistently. They hate each other. They hate each other, and they've agreed, for reasons that took a long time to understand, that I'm more important than the hating. So the hating is still there, but it operates around me rather than through me. Hermione looked at him. That's very sophisticated. I've had 11 years to observe it. Have they ever actually fought? Yes. About me. Sometimes. About the past. Sometimes. About porridge once. That last one went on for 3 days. About porridge. The specific nutritional adequacy of porridge as a breakfast food for a growing child. Snape was in favour of it. Sirius thought it was, his word, depressing. Who won? Neither, they compromised. I had porridge on weekdays and eggs at weekends. This was apparently a diplomatic achievement. Hermione laughed. It was the laugh of someone who finds things funny because they are genuinely funny rather than because laughing is socially expected. And? At school? Is it strange? Having Professor Snape as a teacher? It's strange in a specific way. He's exactly the same. Exactly as exacting, which is what he said would happen and which I believed and which is still strange when it's happening to you. Is he? He's fair, Harry said, which is not the same as nice. He's harder on me, if anything, because he knows I can do better, so better is what he asks for. Is that all right? Harry thought about this, about the specific quality of Snape's classroom attention, the precision of it, the way it stripped away approximation and required exactness, the way it was different from the Thursday attention, but not less. Just, formal, professional. Yes, Harry said. It's all right. Snape's potions class, second week of term. Longbottom, Snape said. His voice had the quality that Harry had spent 11 years cataloguing. This was the disappointment voice, not the anger voice, which was sharper, but the assessment voice, which was sadder and in some ways worse because it expected less. You have managed to melt a cauldron. This is difficult to achieve. Most students, given the specifications of this task, would produce an inadequate potion. You have produced no potion and a structural failure in pewter. This is, in a very specific sense, impressive. Neville Longbottom was the colour of chalk. Harry, 2 benches over, watched Neville's hands. They were shaking. Not from Snape's words exactly, from the cumulative weight of them, from the specific gathering pressure of a person who has been told too many times that they are inadequate, and who has arrived at a new venue for the message. Harry had seen this. Not the same message. Harry had never been told he was inadequate, but the architecture of it, the particular way a person's body responds to being measured and found wanting. After class, in the corridor, Neville looked at him. "Sorry about the cauldron. Why are you sorry to me? You were closest. The fumes were mostly water vapour. Are you all right? Snape hates me." Harry considered how to answer this. He had access, on this question, to information that other students did not. "Snape has very specific standards," Harry said, "and a very limited tolerance for the gap between what he knows a person can do and what they're actually doing, which means he has expectations of you, which means he doesn't think you can't do it." Neville looked at him. "That's not what it felt like." "No," Harry said. "It doesn't feel that way. But the alternative, the other version of Snape, is someone who doesn't say anything, and that means he's written you off." He paused. "He hasn't written you off." Neville stared at him. "How do you know?" "Because I know him. Imperfectly, from a different context. But I know the difference between the versions." "What do I do?" "Do better," Harry said. It came out sounding more Snape than he intended. He adjusted. "And come to me if you want help with the potions. I've been doing them since I was 6. Neville's expression shifted. Something very small. The beginning of something. "Really?" Neville said. "Really, Thursday afternoons. Library, Ron and Harry." The friendship formed the way all important friendships form, in a moment of crisis that revealed character. In their case, the crisis was a troll, and the revelation was that Ron Weasley, faced with a choice between running away and running toward, ran toward, which was entirely Gryffindor and entirely Ron, and entirely the kind of thing Harry had been raised to recognize as the most important kind of courage. "You didn't have to come in," Harry said. Afterward, "Hermione was in there," Ron said. "She's annoying, but she's ours. She's only been here 2 months. Yeah, but she's ours, you know?" Harry knew. He had been surrounded by this his whole life. The specific, irrational, total commitment that people made to each other that had nothing to do with time and everything to do with something else that didn't have a precise word. "My guardian Sirius," Harry said, would describe that as the Gryffindor condition. What would Snape say? Harry thought about it. He'd say that it was tactically suboptimal and logically defensible, given the information available. Ron stared. Does he actually talk like that? Not always. When he's being honest, he uses shorter sentences. What's the short version? Harry smiled. You don't leave people. The Philosopher's Stone. Harry went down through the trapdoor. Ron was taken out by the chess set. The sacrifice. The Gryffindor sacrifice. The specific self-expenditure of someone who understands chess well enough to know they are the piece that needs to go. Hermione solved the logic puzzle and turned back at the flames with the statement that there were other kinds of courage and that this one was his to finish. And Harry went forward. He was not alone. Not exactly. He had been raised for 11 years by two people who had given him everything they could figure out how to give, and what they had given him was both of them. He had Sirius's courage, not the reckless kind, the thought-through kind, the courage that knows what it's walking toward and does it anyway. And he had Snape's precision, the diagnostic calm, the ability to look at a situation and identify the elements, the habit of analysis that came from 11 years of Thursday evenings, and the question, what does the colour tell you? In the mirror chamber, Quirrell confronted him, and the thing on the back of Quirrell's head, the thing that had been the shape of the worst night of Harry's life even though he could not remember it, looked at him through red eyes and said, "Harry Potter, I have waited to meet you." "I know who you are," Harry said. "Do you?" "You're what happened to my parents." He kept his voice even. Snape's voice, he thought. Not cold but controlled, not unaffected but precise. "You tried to happen to me too. I will happen to you. It is inevitable." "You've been saying that for a year," Harry said. Through Quirrell, who has been, not subtle, in retrospect. Something moved in the red eyes. "Calculation, you are very calm," Voldemort said. "I was raised by Severus Snape and Sirius Black," Harry said. "I've been trained for calm since I was 6. "Snape," Voldemort said. "My spy." "Your former spy," Harry said, "who is now co-guardianship paperwork. Different relationship. He cannot help you here." "No," Harry said. "He can't." He looked at the mirror, at the family in it that wasn't there anymore, that had never been there for him. James and Lily, and behind them, in the mirror that showed the deepest desire of the heart, 2 more figures. Sirius, laughing. Snape, who was not laughing but whose face had the muscle movement, the thing Harry had been reading for 11 years, the closest he came to it. Both of them, Harry thought. I want both of them. I want James and Lily, and I want what I have instead, which is also love, even if it's a stranger shape for it. He felt the stone in his pocket before he understood how it had gotten there. "Give it to me," Voldemort said. "No," Harry said. The confrontation was what it was. The protection held, Lily's love, the ancient magic, the burning where Quirrell touched him, and the disintegration of the vessel and Voldemort's fleeing. Harry fainted. The stone was safe, and when he woke in the hospital wing, there were 2 chairs beside the bed, one occupied by Sirius, who had arrived from London at some point in the night, and who was asleep with his head on his arms on Harry's bed, with the specific exhaustion of someone who had been terrified and then relieved, and who had crashed directly into unconsciousness without any intermediate processing. The other occupied by Snape, who was not asleep, who was sitting upright with a book in his lap that he was not reading, looking at Harry with the expression that Harry had spent 11 years cataloguing and that he had never quite named. "Professor," Harry said. "Potter," Snape said. "The stone is safe. I know. Quirrell is. I know. How long? You were unconscious for 2 days. Don't attempt to sit up. Your circulatory system requires time to... I'm fine. You are saying that because you don't know how unfine you currently are. The touch of the killing curse residue, even in its weakened form, Snape stopped. Thank you, Harry said, for being here. The muscle movement, stronger than usual. Where else would I be? Snape said. It was not a question. Harry recognized it as the kind of statement that could only be made by a person who has stopped arguing with themselves about what they feel. Sirius made a sound in his sleep. Harry looked at him. At the big hands loosely curled on the bed covers. At the dark circles under his eyes, and the grey beginning at his temples, and the specific, battered quality of someone who has lived through things and who has found reasons to keep living. Sirius came, Harry said. Sirius has been here since midnight, Snape said. He drove the motorbike. He was pulled over by a Muggle police officer who was apparently underprepared for the experience. Of course he drove the motorbike. I have suggested on multiple occasions that the motorbike is not a suitable... Snape, yes, stop. I was. Stop for a minute. Can you stop? Snape stopped. Looked at Harry. At the boy who was 11 and who had just faced a fragment of the darkest wizard alive and who was currently asking Snape to stop being Snape for a minute because what was required was something else. He stopped. "It's all right," Harry said. "Yes," Snape said. "All of it." "Yes," Snape said, and the yes was different from the first one. The first was agreement. The second was something else. Sirius woke up, saw Harry awake, said something that was not a word but communicated everything clearly, grabbed Harry's hand. "Hey," Harry said. "Don't do that again," Sirius said. "I didn't do anything. Something was done to me. That's worse. I can't tell you not to do things that are done to you." "I know." "Harry, I know, Sirius, I know." Sirius held his hand. Snape sat very still in the chair, and Harry, between them, felt the thing that he had felt all his life, the specific, configured, architecturally unusual but utterly real safety of being loved by exactly these two people. Second year. The whispers started in September. Parseltongue, at Dueling Club. The snake. The hiss that Harry produced without thinking, and that turned the room into a held breath. Slytherin heir, the whispers said. Blood Traitor's ward. Snape's favourite. Dark magic. He speaks snake tongue. He's the one. Harry was called to Dumbledore's office. He sat across from the headmaster and answered questions with the specific, measured honesty of someone who has been raised to consider words carefully. Snape was present, not seated, standing near the wall with his arms folded, in the particular posture that was not quite witness and not quite advocate, but contained elements of both. "Did you know you were a Parselmouth?" Dumbledore asked. "No," Harry said. "I didn't know it had a name. I thought I was, talking to snakes." "Normally," and the student's reaction. "I understand their reaction," Harry said. "But I'm not Slytherin's heir. My lineage is documented. No one is questioning your lineage. People are questioning my allegiance," Harry said. He said it without heat. "Precisely, which is different." Dumbledore looked at him, the blue eyes, warm and assessing. "And your allegiance is?" "Gryffindor, Lily Potter's son. I was raised by Sirius Black, who would consider it a personal failing if I turned out to be a threat to Muggle-borns." A pause. "And by Snape, who is one." A silence. Snape, near the wall, was very still. "I am what I am," Snape said. Eventually, "Yes," Harry said. "And it matters. To me." The whispers continued. Harry navigated them with the patience of someone who has spent 11 years watching two very different people hold their positions under pressure. He did not perform innocence. He did not rage against the accusation. He waited and continued being himself, and trusted that the being himself was legible. Ron believed him from the start. Hermione arrived at the conclusion through logic in roughly 4 hours. Neville took a week, which Harry considered honest. A week of watching and deciding was legitimate epistemology. The chamber, when it opened, was something else entirely. The investigation, as Harry conducted it, was different from how it would have been without his particular upbringing. He had resources that other students did not. He had 11 years of access to a potions master who did not believe in withholding useful information from people who asked the right questions, and he had Snape's precise analytical approach to problem solving as a template. He made a list of what was known, what was suspected, what could be eliminated. The process looked like a Thursday evening at Grimmauld Place, systematic, documented, moving from hypothesis to evidence to conclusion, with the specific care of someone who understood that wrong conclusions in serious situations had consequences. The monster, Harry told Ron and Hermione in the library, is a basilisk. Ron stared. A what? A serpent. Salazar Slytherin's monster. Gaze-based attack. Direct gaze fatal, indirect petrification. It's been using the pipes, moving through the plumbing. How do you know? Hermione said. Because Snape has a library, Harry said, at Grimmauld Place. He doesn't live there, but his books do. I've been reading them since I was 7. There's a text on dark magical creatures that covers basilisks specifically. I recognise the symptoms. He paused. And because I'm a Parselmouth, which is a basilisk management skill. I think. I haven't tested this. You think you can talk to the basilisk, Ron said. I think Salazar Slytherin could, Harry said. And I think the ability transfers. I don't know what I'd say to it. But I think I could say something. He told Snape, not in class, in a Thursday evening context, without Sirius, because Sirius's response to Harry has identified a basilisk in the castle and believes he can communicate with it would have been rapid and catastrophic. Snape's response was, "You have read the basilisk chapter in Mortlake's text on serpentine dark creatures?" "Yes. At what age?" 8. Snape's expression did the movement, and you made the connection from the symptoms. "Yes, your reasoning is sound." He paused. The question of whether your Parseltongue ability extends to basilisk communication is open. Historically, basilisks respond to the sound of a Parselmouth's command regardless of the specific individual. The ability is species recognized, not person recognized, which means I could theoretically redirect it, Harry said. In theory, the Chamber of Secrets would need to be located. Opened, and Slytherin's heir, the actual heir, whoever is operating this, would need to be addressed first. The heir isn't Malfoy. No, Snape said. He said it the way he said things that he had already established and did not need to re-examine. Then who? Snape was quiet. He was not quiet the way Sirius went quiet. Sirius's quiet was full of things about to be said. Snape's quiet was where conclusions lived before they were ready to be shared. Tell me about the diary, Snape said. What diary? Ginny Weasley, Snape said, has a diary that is not hers. I have observed it in her possession. The magical signature of the object is wrong. Significantly wrong. How do you know she has it? Because I observe students, Snape said. All of them. It is my function, Harry thought. A magical object. That could influence behaviour. The attack started after term began. Ginny is. She's been different this year. Quiet. She used to talk. Snape looked at him. You notice that sort of thing? I was raised by two people who don't talk about what they're feeling. You learn to read behaviour. Yes, Snape said. You do. The diary. Tom Riddle's diary. The piece of Voldemort's past embedded in a 16-year-old's memories of himself, feeding on Ginny, growing stronger. Harry figured it out 3 weeks before the chamber opened, brought it to Snape. Snape confirmed it, and took it to Dumbledore. The timing was not quite right. The diary was not yet in Snape's possession when it was moved to the chamber. Ginny was taken, and Harry went down anyway. The chamber. The basilisk. Tom Riddle's memory ghost, confident and cold and radiating the specific menace of someone who has had 50 years inside a diary to refine their approach. Harry Potter, Riddle said. I've been watching you for months. Through Ginny's eyes. I know, Harry said. What did you see? A boy who is nothing like the legend. A boy raised by a traitor and a half-blood. A boy who should have been extraordinary and is merely functional. Harry looked at him. That's interesting. What is interesting? You spent 50 years in a diary, Harry said. 50 years of Tom Riddle at 16. And the strategy you have is to tell me I'm disappointing, which is, he paused, that's Snape's strategy. But Snape means it as information, not as an attack. You mean it as an attack. Which means you understand that it could be information, and you've chosen to deploy it wrongly. Riddle stared at him. You're not afraid of me. I'm afraid of the basilisk, Harry said honestly. I'm not afraid of you. You're an impression. A memory. The thing that's actually dangerous is the snake. The snake obeys me. Does it? Harry said. And then, in Parseltongue, are you here? A sound in the pipes, a response that was not words but was acknowledgement. Come here, Harry said. Come here. I will speak with you. Riddle's face shifted. Something cracked in the confidence. "What are you—" "He is not the heir," Harry said in Parseltongue. "The heir is gone. I am what is here now. Come, you don't have to serve a memory." The basilisk was very large. Older than Hogwarts' current form, older than anyone living, a creature that had been in that chamber for 1,000 years, and that had, in that 1,000 years, never been spoken to. Only commanded. Harry spoke to it. Not in commands. In the conversation he would have had with any creature he encountered who was old and large and had been used by people rather than understood by them. "Can you sleep?" he asked. "If I ask you to sleep, will you sleep?" A pause. The vast scaled head considered. "Sleep," it said. "Yes, sleep then, sleep," Harry said. "Not forever, just now, while I fix this." The basilisk lowered its head, its eyes closed. The chamber, which had been cold and vast and dangerous, was suddenly just cold and vast. Harry turned to Riddle. "Now," he said, "where's the diary?" Riddle's confidence had not collapsed, but it had shifted, the way a building shifts when the foundation has been addressed and the upper floors need to recalculate their weight distribution. "You cannot, the Fang," Harry said. From the basilisk, "Give me the diary, and I'll use the Fang. Or I'll ask the basilisk where it keeps its shed fangs, their venomous even shed, and I'll find one myself. Either way." Riddle looked at him for a long moment. "You'll destroy me." "Yes," Harry said. "I'll destroy you. But I'll be honest about it, which is more than you were with Ginny. He destroyed the diary." The memory ghost disintegrated. Ginny, on the floor, breathed normally and opened her eyes and looked at Harry with the expression of someone who has been through something she does not yet have the language to process. "Hi," Harry said. "Hi," Ginny said. "Can you walk?" "I think so." "Then let's go. The basilisk is sleeping and I'd like to be out before it wakes up." The aftermath. Dumbledore's office. Harry, Ginny, Fawkes, the Sword of Gryffindor, because Fawkes had brought it, which was Fawkes operating with the specific, independent judgment of a phoenix, and which was a detail Harry noted for later consideration. The Weasleys arrived. Molly held Harry for a long time, which Harry received with the specific mixture of comfort and slight overwhelm that he experienced whenever Molly Weasley engaged her full capacity for maternal feeling. He was accustomed to love that was slightly awkward in its expression. Molly's love was not awkward. It was total and warm and slightly crushing. "Mrs. Weasley," he said, when she finally released him. "I'm all right." "Of course you're all right," she said. "You are extraordinary. I mainly talk to a snake." "You talk to a basilisk," she said. "And it listened. That is not talking to a snake. That is negotiating with an apex predator." "Snape would say I got lucky," Harry said. "Well, Snape can." Molly stopped. "Snape would be wrong," she said, with the specific precision of someone who has had a reflexive statement and has managed it. Harry smiled. Snape arrived. Later than Sirius, who had been contacted by Flu, and who had arrived through the fireplace in Dumbledore's office at approximately the speed of someone who had been told Harry was in danger, and who had not waited to change out of his indoor clothes. "He's fine," Sirius had said to Dumbledore. "He's completely fine. You just flued me and told me he was in a chamber full of a basilisk." "Former chamber," Harry said. "The basilisk is sleeping. The basilisk is—" Sirius looked at Harry. Then at the sword, then at Fawkes, then back at Harry. "I negotiated with it," Harry said. It's fine, Sirius, that's—" "Harry, I know," Harry said. "Sit down. There's a chair." Sirius sat. He was not someone who often did what Harry said, but he did it then, because the particular quality of Harry's voice, the calm, the precision, the specific Snape inherited tone of someone who has assessed the situation and determined that sitting is the correct response, was something he had learnt to listen to. Snape arrived 20 minutes later. He looked at Harry for a long, assessing moment. Then, at the sword. Basilisk venom on the blade, he said. Yes, Harry said. You destroyed the object with it. Yes, and the basilisk is currently sleeping. Yes, you negotiated with it. Yes, in Parseltongue. Yes, Snape sat down in the other chair. He did not speak for a while. Then, that text on basilisk behaviour, he said. Did you read the chapter on communication? 3 times, Harry said. And? The 3rd time I thought it was mostly speculation. Historically, no one had actually tried. Until tonight. Snape looked at him for a long time. Then, well done, he said. Not the flat well done of routine competence. A different one. 2 words with the specific weight of a person who does not give them lightly. Sirius, in the other chair, made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a sob, and was somewhere in the specific difficult territory between them. Right, Sirius said. Both of you are. He stopped. Both of you are absolutely something. What sort of something? Harry asked. The best sort, Sirius said. Ours? The word sat in Dumbledore's office. Snape did not correct it. Sirius did not take it back. Harry held it in the careful way he held most things that mattered. Ours? Yes, 3rd year. The Dementors. The Dementors arrived with 3rd year, stationed at the gates of Hogwarts by ministry decree, and they were everything Harry had been told they would be, and also something he had not been told. He had been told about the cold, about the specific temperature-dropping presence of them, the way they extracted warmth from the air around them. He had been told about the depression, the way they fed on happiness, the specific grey flatness that came over people in their vicinity. He had not been told about what he specifically would hear. On the train, when the Dementor glided through the compartment, Harry heard his mother. Not in the abstract, not a sense of loss, or a pang of grief. Her voice, specific, real, terrified, not Harry, please not Harry, take me instead, take me, and then silence, and then the green light. He came back to himself on the train floor with Lupin offering chocolate and Ron watching him with the expression of someone who has just seen something that has shaken his understanding of the situation. You heard something, Hermione said. She said it quietly, not as an accusation, as information gathering. My mother, Harry said. He said it the way he'd been taught to say hard things, directly, without flinching. Because flinching didn't make the thing smaller, it just made the saying harder. Her last words. Lupin, across from him, went very still. Harry ate the chocolate, let the warmth come back. Thought about what Sirius would say and what Snape would say and arrived, as he usually did, at some position between the two. Sirius would say, of course you heard her. Of course you did. That's not weakness. That's love. Snape would say, what the Dementor showed you is the most painful thing you have. That means it's also the most protected. Understand it, and it becomes less accessible. Harry held both of these. Ben looked at Lupin. The Patronus charm, Harry said. I'd like to learn it. Lupin looked at him. A specific look, not surprise exactly, but recognition. The look of someone encountering something they have not seen before, but that they understand immediately. Yes, Lupin said. I thought you might. The Patronus lessons happened on Tuesday evenings in Lupin's office, and they were among the most unusual educational experiences Harry had encountered, which was saying something given that his educational experiences before Hogwarts had included Snape explaining the relationship between temperature and viscosity at age 6. The memory needs to be specific, Lupin said. Not an emotion, not a concept, a specific moment. I know, Harry said. Sirius told me. Sirius has experience with Dementors. 12 years of it. Harry paused. He told me that the way through is the thing you love most. Not in the abstract. The concrete version of it. What's yours? Harry thought. It should have been easy. He had people he loved, specific people, specific memories. But the specific memory that rose when he reached for the best one was, unusual, Thursday evenings, Harry said. Thursday evenings? Snape comes on Thursdays. Usually, has since I was small. He comes and we work on things, potions or theory or sometimes just reading in the same room. He paused. One time when I was about 7, Sirius came home early from wherever he was and the 3 of us were there. All 3. For about an hour before they started arguing about something. But for that hour, what was it like? Ordinary, Harry said. Just ordinary, the way I imagine most people's houses feel all the time. He paused. That's what I want. The ordinary version. Use that, Lupin said. It seems small. It's not small. It's exactly the right size. Lupin looked at him. Ready? Expecto Patronum. The stag emerged from the tip of Harry's wand the 3rd time he tried. Silver and enormous and very clearly his father's animal form, which Lupin's expression confirmed without his needing to say it. Prongs, Lupin said, quietly. His voice had something in it. Is that what it is? Harry said. His animagus form? Yes, Harry watched the stag circle the office. He was a good man, he said. Not a question. Very good. Flawed, as good men are. Lupin looked at the Patronus. And you have his instincts. Whatever else you've been taught, the instincts come from somewhere else. From him. From him. Sirius's identity revealed itself in stages, as it always did. The news, Sirius Black escaped, arrived in September. Harry read it in the paper at breakfast with the same careful, neutral expression he used for things he needed to process before reacting. Sirius had told him. Of course Sirius had told him. Sirius and secrecy had a difficult relationship, and Harry's parentage and Sirius's history were not subjects Sirius had hidden from him. Harry had known since he was old enough to ask the right questions, who his parents were, how they died, who was blamed, what had happened. He's innocent. Harry had known this since he was 8, after his own careful reading. 3 days with the newspaper archive and Sirius's account laid out in parallel on his bedroom floor. What Harry had not known, what changed in 3rd year, was what Sirius being innocent meant for Peter Pettigrew, who was still alive, who was here. Ron's rat, Harry said to Hermione, on a Wednesday afternoon, in the library. Hermione looked at him. Her look was the look of someone who has been presented with a hypothesis and is running it against existing data. Ron's rat, she said. Is 12 years old, Harry said. Rats live 3 or 4 years. He's enormous. He's been sick, but he's never died. He has a specific aversion. Harry stopped. He runs when he hears Sirius's name. I've seen it. I thought it was a rat thing. It's not a rat thing. You think he's an animagus. He's been hiding in plain sight for 12 years. As a rat. That's... Hermione sat very still. That means your godfather didn't know, Harry said. He didn't. And Pettigrew is in the castle. The shrieking shack. Lupin and Sirius, and the truth assembling itself in the dark and the dust. Harry had known most of it already, had arrived with the context of 11 years of stories and Sirius's careful, painful, honest account of the night that had cost him everything. The shack was confirmation rather than revelation. What was not part of Harry's prior knowledge was seeing Sirius in person. In the flesh. Not the escaped convict photographs in the Prophet, not the stories, not the Sirius of Grimold Place who Harry had known for 11 years. This version, gaunt, grey-templed, burning with the desperate intensity of a man who has been proved right about the most important thing after 12 years of no one believing him. Harry, Sirius said. He said it the way he said very few things, without the performance, without the narrative, just the word and what was underneath it. I know, Harry said. I know who you are. What do you know? Everything, Harry said. You told me everything. You've been telling me for 11 years. Sirius stared. Then, and Harry had seen this before, had seen the different shapes of it over many years, but had not seen this specific shape, he started crying. Not the night crying, the private Azkaban residue crying. Out loud crying, the kind that didn't care about witnesses. Sirius, Harry said. He crossed the shack. Put his arms around the man. He was taller than Harry considerably, but in this moment, Harry felt larger, which was the specific experience of comfort flowing in the direction that needed it. I'm sorry, Sirius said. For all of it. For the 12 years. For not. You couldn't, Harry said. You couldn't have done anything differently. Pettigrew was planning this from the beginning. I should have taken you. After, when everything, you made the wrong choice under impossible conditions, Harry said. It came out precise. Snape precise. He felt Sirius register it, the familiar texture. You sound like Sirius started. I know, Harry said. I've had good teachers. The Time Turner. The Loop. Buckbeak and Sirius both freed. Harry stood on the tower and watched his godfather fly away on a hippogriff and felt the specific, complicated texture of this. The freedom that was not complete because Pettigrew had escaped and Sirius was a fugitive still and nothing was formally resolved, but that was real and immediate and alive. We'll write to him, Hermione said. Beside him. He can. He'll find somewhere safe. And we'll write. He has Grimmauld Place, Harry said. He owns it. He can go there. As long as the Fidelius is maintained. Does it have a Fidelius? No, Harry said. He thought about it. We could set one. It would take Snape. Snape would help, Hermione said, with the confidence of someone who had spent 2 years watching the specific configuration of Harry's guardianship. Wouldn't he? Yes, Harry said. He'd say he was doing it for legal and strategic reasons, and he would mean it, and it would also not be the only reason. He could just say he cares about Sirius. He could not say that. It would kill him. Hermione laughed softly. Harry smiled. Below them, in the castle, Snape was somewhere furious. Harry could feel it from here. Not literally, but the way you can feel things about people you know completely. The specific atmosphere of a Snape who has been made to look a fool and who is processing this at volume. I should go find him, Harry said. He'll be angry. Yes, are you worried about that? Harry thought about it. No, he said. He's angry at the situation. He's not angry at me. He paused. Well, he's angry at me a bit because I let Pettigrew go. But the letting go was the right call, and he knows that. How do you know he knows that? Because the right call always takes precedence with Snape, even when the right call is the one he didn't make. 4th year. The tournament. Harry's name came out of the goblet. The Great Hall went still in the specific way that it went still when something happened that didn't fit the categories available. A 4th school. A 4th champion. Harry Potter, whose name no one had entered, whose standing as a champion no one could explain. Harry stood. Walked forward, because the alternative was not walking forward, and the alternative was worse. In the antechamber, Dumbledore asked his questions. Harry answered them. The adults argued. Harry watched them argue with the specific patience of someone who has been the subject of adult arguments for 11 years and who understands that the arguing is separate from the outcome. Sirius arrived the next morning, not on the motorbike, apparated directly to Hogsmeade, which was as close as he could safely come. Harry met him at the Hog's Head, which was empty at 8 in the morning except for the barman, who regarded both of them with the specific indifference of someone who has seen everything. Harry, Sirius said, when Harry sat down. I didn't enter my name, Harry said. I know that. Snape? Knows too. He came to Grimmauld Place last night to tell me before I read it in the Prophet. Sirius looked at his hands. First time he's done that. Come to tell me something before the paper. Harry filed this. What do I do? Harry said. You compete, Sirius said. You have no choice. The contract? I know about the contract. I read about it in the historical record of the tournament. What I'm asking is how. What's the approach? Sirius looked at him. You want strategy. I want to survive, Harry said, which requires strategy. Snape's coming tomorrow, Sirius said. Will, he paused. The pause was the specific pause of someone realizing something. We'll work it out together, he said. The three of us. You and Snape working together, Harry said. It's happened before. It's always, Sirius's expression did something complicated. It's always when you're at stake. We're better at it when you're at stake. That's some backhanded reassurance, Harry said. I've always specialized in backhanded, Sirius said. You want some tea? This place apparently does tea. This place does something that might be tea, Harry said. Good enough. The tournament proceeded. The flu sessions with Sirius. The Thursday sessions with Snape. The specific, unusual, genuinely effective advisory system that was two men who despised each other providing complementary intelligence to a 14-year-old competing in a tournament that was trying to kill him. The first task? Dragon. Sirius provided the emotional intelligence, the specific assessment of Harry as a flyer, the confidence in the firebolt, the knowledge of Harry's instincts. Snape provided the analytical framework, the assessment of the dragon's vulnerabilities, the specific sequencing of the approach. Harry beat the Hungarian Horntail with a combination of both, speed and precision, heart and architecture. The second task, the lake, the hostage, Ron, taken, Harry in the water, with the gillyweed that Neville gave him, swimming toward the thing he would not leave. He returned with Ron and Fleur's sister both. The overperformance. The moral fibre docked points failed to penalise. The third task, the maze, the portkey. Harry was not the only one who understood something was wrong. Tom Riddle, the restored Voldemort, had been preparing this for a year. Snape had known, had felt it in the mark, had reported it to Dumbledore, had spent a year watching Moody with the specific, patient attention of someone who is not certain, but who is 70% certain, and who is proceeding accordingly. Crouch's arrest, the real Moody uncovered, happened too late for the maze. Dumbledore intervened too late. Harry was in the maze, and then Harry was in the graveyard. The graveyard. Cedric died. Harry stood in Little Hangleton in the rain with Cedric's body and Wormtail's silver hand and a cauldron, and the thing he had always known was coming, the shape of it, the inevitability of it, the Dark Lord restored in the specific, terrifying, physical reality of the red eyes and the white face. Kill the spare. Cedric had not been a spare. Cedric had been a person, good and kind and 17 years old, and he was dead, and Harry's mind filed this with the precision that Snape had trained into him. This is important. Store it correctly. Process it later. Right now, you need to be here. He was here. The duel with the brother wands. The connection that should not have been possible, and that was, anyway, the priori incantatem. The reversal, the echoes of the dead. His father's voice. His mother's. Harry, his father said. We're so proud. We've watched. Hold on, his mother said. Just a little longer. You can do this. And behind them the thought, sudden and stabilizing, Sirius is watching. Somewhere, and Snape is watching. Not here, not in this graveyard, but watching the way they always watch. From the places where they are, pointed at me. Not alone. He broke the connection. Grabbed Cedric, touched the portkey. He came back to the maze. Dumbledore's office. Hours later. Fudge and his aura and the truth they were not going to believe. Harry sat and said the things that needed to be said and watched the adults not believe them and felt the specific, exhausted patience of someone who has just lived through the worst night of his life and who understands that the not believing is institutional rather than personal and who is too tired to do anything about it tonight. Snape arrived first. Not with Sirius, separately. He came through the flue at some point in the small hours and sat in the corner of the hospital wing where Harry had been taken, with the specific presence of someone who is not going to leave and is not going to announce this. Harry looked at him. "You felt it," Harry said, when he came back. Snape looked at the dark mark on his arm. Then at Harry. "Yes, what did it feel like?" A long pause. "Like the worst thing I know returning," Snape said. "But distant. I don't know how to describe distance in a sensation that is primarily internal, but you knew it was real." "Yes, and you came here." "There is nowhere else I go when you are in danger," Snape said. He said it the way he said the truest things, directly and without softening, because softening would make it smaller, and it was not a small thing. Harry nodded. Sirius arrived 20 minutes later through the flue with the specific desperate speed of someone who has been fluing from location to location because he cannot be at Hogwarts directly, but who is trying every approach. He was not subtle about his arrival. He was rarely subtle. He saw Harry. He crossed the room. He sat on the edge of Harry's bed and put both hands on Harry's shoulders and looked at him the way he always looked at Harry when something bad had happened, with the full force of someone who loves completely and who cannot bear to look and cannot bear not to. "Tell me," Sirius said. Harry told them both. The graveyard, the portkey, Cedric, Wormtail's hand, Voldemort's new body, the duel and the connection and the echoes of the dead, his parents' voices. Sirius's hands tightened on Harry's shoulders. Snape was very still. "They told me," Harry said, "my dad and Mum, that they'd been watching." He paused. "I didn't know that was possible. I didn't know the echoes were real. We don't know that they were," Snape said. It was careful in the specific sense of, "I know," Harry said. "I know it might be the magic doing what the magic does. I'm not. I know the difference between what I need to believe and what's true." "Do you?" Snape said. "Snape taught me that," Harry said, to Sirius. "He'd be very annoyed if I applied it selectively. I am very annoyed by a great many things," Snape said. "And yet, you're here," Harry said. Snape looked at him. The muscle movement, different this time, stronger, more visible than Harry had ever seen it, as if the night had made some of the controls less efficient. "And yet I'm here," Snape said. 5th year. The Ministry's war on truth. Umbridge. The Dar. Harry organised the Dar the way he organised everything, combining what he'd learned from both of them. The structure was Snape's, the diagnostic approach, the progressive curriculum, the specific sequencing from defensive to offensive spells that maximised both individual competency and group coordination. The culture was Sirius's, the warmth, the trust, the specific refusal to leave anyone behind. The combination was, as Hermione noted, more effective than either alone. "You run this like a professional," she said after the 3rd session. "I was trained by a professional," Harry said. "Snape?" "Snape and Sirius. They're different kinds of professional." He paused. "Snape has better technique. Sirius has better instincts. I'm trying to run the Dar with both. Is that possible? We'll see." Umbridge was the kind of obstacle that required different tools from Voldemort. Voldemort was direct. The threat was clear. The opposition was clear. The response was clear. Umbridge was institutional. She operated through the system, using the system's legitimacy to do things that were illegitimate. Snape's training was specific to this problem. the particular education of a man who had spent most of his adult life operating within an institution he disagreed with, maintaining a position that required constant navigation of official channels while pursuing aims that the institution would have found threatening. Harry spent 2 years learning how that worked. "You don't fight the system directly when the system has more power than you," Snape had said once at Grimmauld Place. "Then how do you fight it?" Harry said. "You continue to function within it while building the conditions under which it fails," Snape said. "You identify the specific mechanisms by which it maintains itself, and you address those specifically. Not loudly, not publicly, with patience." "That sounds like you're describing the Order." "It is not entirely unlike the Order," Snape agreed. Against Umbridge, Harry was patient. He was also, when patience was not adequate, creative in the specific way that Sirius had modelled, the specific, joyful creativity of someone who finds rules interesting as things to understand rather than as constraints. The Weasley twins provided most of this second component. Harry provided the strategic scaffolding, Hermione provided the legal analysis, Neville provided, increasingly, the herbology-based contributions that surprised everyone who had not been watching Neville Longbottom for 5 years, an understanding that the quiet person in the back of the room was building towards something. "He's going to be remarkable," Harry told Hermione after a Dar session in which Neville had produced the most accurate disarming charm in the room. "He already is," Hermione said. "I mean publicly remarkable, in a way other people notice." "When does that happen?" "When something needs him to be," Harry said. "He's been getting ready. He just doesn't know yet what for." The Department of Mysteries. The trap, the Dar going in together, the battle in the circular room, the revolving doors, the veil. Sirius came through the Floo with the Order. Too late, but not too late, arrived when the battle was still happening, when there was still something to be done. Harry watched him fight. Had never seen Sirius fight in earnest before. Had seen the training, had seen the sparring with the Order, but not the real thing, not the pure version. And Sirius fighting was specific, a Gryffindor fighter, completely, but not reckless, not imprecise. Years of Order fieldwork and combat magic, refined and hardened by 12 years of Azkaban into something that was both brilliant and slightly terrifying. "He's good," Harry thought. "He's actually very good." Bellatrix, the killing curse, the veil. Sirius's expression in the fraction of a second between the curse and the falling. Harry would spend years trying to describe it and never quite manage. It was not fear. It was not surprise. It was something that looked, from the distance Harry was at, like the recognition of something very final. He fell through the archway. Harry moved. Ron caught him. Hermione caught him. 3 people, and the specific combined force of no. Not that, not him, not today. "He's gone," Luna said. She said it with the specific, honest, slightly devastating quality that was Luna, not cruel, not soft, accurate in the way that very clear-sighted people are accurate. "The veil is... They don't come back, Harry." Harry knew this. He had been told by Sirius himself what the veil was and what it meant. He had been told the specific history of it, the ancient magical boundary between living and dead, the permanent crossing. He knew. He still ran. He ran toward Bellatrix, and what happened next was the specific shape of Harry Potter at 15. Not controlled, not structured, not the careful strategic approach that 11 years of Thursday evenings had built. Pure Sirius, at this moment. Pure charge toward the problem, pure fury, pure the person I love most, and I cannot let it end here. He did not catch her. He was not going to catch her. She was a far better duelist than he was, and he was running on grief and adrenaline, and neither of those were adequate. But he slowed her. Long enough. Dumbledore came. And then the atrium. Voldemort. The duel with Dumbledore that Harry watched from behind a pillar and that resolved with Voldemort's possession attempt and Dumbledore's shield and the arrival of Fudge and his aurors who could no longer pretend. They could not pretend. Sirius was gone. Harry stood in the atrium after and felt the specific terrible quality of an absence that had previously always been a presence. The configuration he had grown up in, himself and Sirius, and Snape forming the specific triangle of their household, was missing a point. Snape arrived through a flue point in the Ministry lobby. He was not part of the group who had gone to the Department of Mysteries. He had been at Hogwarts. But he was here now. And he looked at Harry, and Harry looked back. "He's gone," Harry said. "Yes," Snape said. "Did you feel it?" "When?" "No," Snape said. "The mark doesn't respond to." He stopped. "I felt nothing through the mark. I came because Lupin contacted me." "Then how did you know to come here?" "Not to the hospital wing." "Because Dumbledore's battle with the Dark Lord occurred in the atrium, and the battle being over means both of them are no longer here and you are. You tracked my location." "I know where you go," Snape said. "I have always known where you go." Harry stood in the atrium of the Ministry of Magic, 16 years old, with Sirius 12 hours gone and Snape standing 6 feet away, and the specific, devastating recalibration of everything settling around him. "What do we do now?" Harry said. "Now," Snape said, "we go home." "Home is?" Harry stopped. He did not finish the sentence. Grimmauld Place was Sirius's. Everything at Grimmauld Place was Sirius's. Every morning and every bad night, and every argument about porridge and the motorbike in the kitchen and the curtain over the portrait of Walburga Black. "Home is where it has always been," Snape said, with a precision that was not cruelty. "The house does not change because the person is gone. He is the house," Harry said. "He was the house," Snape said. "Past tense is accurate. Present tense," he paused. "The house remains. And you remain. And I," he stopped. Harry waited. "And I," Snape said, "remain as well." It was the most direct thing Snape had ever said to him. Harry received it the way he received Snape's direct things, carefully, completely, without making a production of it. "All right," Harry said. "Yes," Snape said. "All right." The summer after 5th year was the quietest summer Harry had ever known. Not peaceful. Quiet is not the same as peaceful. Quiet is the quality of a house that has had a loud person in it and that is now adjusting to the absence. Grimmauld Place was quieter. The portrait of Walburga Black still screamed at the curtain. The kitchen still had the motorbike against the wall, which no one moved because moving it would be acknowledging it. Preacher moved through the house with the specific air of a house elf who has complex feelings about the death of his master and who is not going to resolve them quickly. Harry moved through it slowly, taking things in, adjusting, which was a long process, and which he did not rush, because Snape had taught him, in words and in an example, that rushing adjustment produces incomplete results. Snape came on Thursdays. As always, not every Thursday there were gaps that summer where Snape was occupied with things Harry did not ask about and that Snape did not offer. But Thursdays, generally, he came and they worked. Potions, sometimes. Theory, sometimes. Occlumency, which Snape had begun in the spring of 5th year with the specific. Private acknowledgement that he should have started sooner and that the delay had contributed to things he did not want to catalogue. The occlumency isn't just about Voldemort, Harry said one Thursday, looking at the results of his last attempt. No, Snape said. It's about learning to sort experience. Among other things, sorting it so that it's accessible when you want it and less present when you don't. Yes, can it help with, Harry paused, with losing someone? Snape looked at him. Occlumency is not a grief management tool, he said. It was careful. It does not address loss. It addresses intrusion, unwanted access to mental content. Grief is not an intrusion. It is legitimate. Then, what does it do for grief? It can prevent you from dwelling against your will, Snape said. It cannot prevent the dwelling. It can ensure that the dwelling is chosen. Harry sat with this. Outside, it was August. The light was long and gold. The street was quiet. I dream about him, Harry said. Yes, Snape said. The dreams are, he paused. Not bad dreams. Just the absence in them, Snape said. The way you know, in the dream, that something is wrong. Harry looked at him. How do you know what the dreams are like? Snape looked at his hands. I dreamed about your mother, he said, for 17 years. I have some acquaintance with the specific quality of absence dreams. Harry did not say anything. Snape had never said this directly. He had said things around it, through it, the long way around the fact, the way he said most things about Lily. This was the direct version. Are they? Different now? Harry said. The dreams? Different, better? Different, Snape said again. You cannot compare the quality of grief across time. You can only note that it becomes less central. Not less real, less organising. Will Sirius become less organising? Eventually, Snape said. Yes, that feels like a betrayal. It feels like one, Snape said. It is not one. The grief diminishing is not the love diminishing. They are separate processes. The love is not subject to the same reduction. Harry looked at the kitchen. At the motorbike. We should do something with the motorbike, he said. Yes, not get rid of it. No, fix it, Harry said. He was always repairing it. We should finish the repair. So it works. Snape looked at the motorbike. His expression, the controlled one, was fully operational, which meant it was working harder than usual to contain something. I know nothing about motorcycle repair, Snape said. Neither do I. But there's probably a book. There are books on everything, Snape said. That is the only reliable thing about the world. Then we start there. They did not start there that Thursday. Or the next. But by September the motorcycle was running. Not perfectly, it still rattled and the exhaust was inconsistent and the charmed flight function required recalibration that neither of them fully understood. But it ran. Harry took it out, twice around the block, on a Tuesday morning when the street was empty. He came back and put it in the kitchen and stood beside it for a while. Better? Snape said from the door. Partly, Harry said. It helps. Good, Snape said. Go to school. Stop being in this kitchen. You're also in this kitchen. I have a reason to be in this kitchen. You have Hogwarts. You could come more. I could come on Thursdays, Snape said. Which is what we have agreed. We could change what we've agreed. Snape looked at him. Yes, he said. We could. He came on Wednesdays too that autumn. Not every Wednesday, but some. 6th year. The Horcruxes. The specificity of what had to be done. Dumbledore had begun the Horcrux lessons in 6th year. Harry attended them with the particular preparation of someone who has been thinking about this since 3rd year, since the point where the pattern of Voldemort's survival had become legible, the rebounding curse, the immortality, the structural question of how you remove something from the world that has made itself indestructible. The Horcruxes were the answer. And Dumbledore's lessons were the architecture of the answer, and Harry attended them and took notes and asked the questions he had been holding since age 12. The diary, Harry said, in Dumbledore's office. 6th year. Tom Riddle's diary. I destroyed it in 2nd year. Was that a Horcrux? Yes, Dumbledore said. How many are there? 6 made, Dumbledore said. 1 destroyed, the diary. The ring, he held up the blackened hand. The ring was cursed. I was incautious. What's happening to your hand? The curse is contained, Dumbledore said. For now. Harry sat with this. For now, he said. How long is now? Approximately a year, Dumbledore said. He said it with the specific, measured calm of someone who has reached an acceptance. Give or take. Does Snape know? Yes, he is managing the curse. He has, Dumbledore paused. He has extended my time considerably. What would have been a matter of weeks has become what you see. Harry absorbed this. He hasn't told me. It was not his to tell. He usually tells me things. He tells you what he can, Dumbledore said. He does not always have freedom in that regard. Harry sat with this too. Then, what happens to the Horcruxes that remain? Dumbledore told him. The locket, the cup, the diadem, Nagini, and the last one, the seventh fragment that lived in the scar. Harry sat in Dumbledore's office and received this information with the specific, careful, already suspected quality of someone who has been thinking about their scar for 15 years and who has suspected, without having the word for it, exactly what it contained. I know, Harry said. You, I've suspected since the graveyard, Harry said. The specific quality of the connection. The way the scar functions as a conduit. I didn't have the framework for it. I have it now. He paused. I have to die. You have to be hit with the killing curse, Dumbledore said. Carefully, there is a distinction. The curse will destroy the fragment. The protection, your mother's protection, should preserve you. Should? The magic at this level is imprecise, Harry said. He looked at the window. The October light. What does Snape think? Dumbledore looked at him. What makes you think I've discussed this with Snape? Because you discuss everything with Snape, Harry said. That's what Snape is for, in your arrangement. He's the one who thinks about the things you need thought about. A pause. Yes, Dumbledore said. I have discussed it with Snape. And? He believes the protection will hold, Dumbledore said. He has been studying the mechanics of sacrificial magic for 16 years. The specific mechanics of your mother's sacrifice. Dumbledore paused. He has considerable investment in the question. Yes, Harry said. He would. He stood. All right. All right, Dumbledore said. All right, Harry said. I trust him. If Snape says the protection holds, it holds. He paused at the door. Tell him I know. Tell him I want to talk about it. Properly, not around it. I'll tell him, Dumbledore said. Snape came that Wednesday. Not the usual Wednesday time, earlier, 10 o'clock in the morning, which was Snape arriving with purpose rather than on schedule. He sat down in the kitchen at Grimmauld Place and looked at Harry. You know, Snape said. Yes, Harry said. All of it? The Horcrux in the scar. The requirement of the killing curse. The protection that should survive it. Harry looked at Snape. Have you been researching my mother's sacrifice? For 16 years, Snape said. Yes. Why? Because the question of whether it could be replicated, extended, modified was relevant. And because the specific mechanics of her sacrifice were poorly documented. I wish to document them properly. And the sacrifice is not replicable. It was her choice in that specific moment under those specific conditions for you specifically. The magic does not scale. It cannot be reproduced. He paused. But the protection it generated does extend to the scenario Dumbledore described. The killing curse directed at you will destroy the fragment. You will survive the curse because of what she did. Are you certain? Snape met his eyes. Yes, he said, I am certain. Because you're telling me to trust you with my life, and you have been trusting me with your life since you were 6 months old in a ruined cottage, Snape said. I am aware of what I am asking. I am certain. Harry looked at him. At the flat black eyes that were not flat at all, that contained an architecture of emotions so complex that Harry had spent 15 years learning to read it. All right, Harry said. All right? All right, Harry said. I trust you. Tell me what else I need to know. Dumbledore's death. The tower. Snape, who did the thing he had agreed to do, which was the most difficult thing a person can be asked to do, which was kill the person who trusted him most in order to maintain the mission that would save everyone else. Harry was beneath the tower. He heard the curse. He heard the fall. He heard the aftermath. He ran. He found Snape at the edge of the grounds, with the Death Eaters filing past, and the look on Snape's face when he saw Harry, the specific, stripped bare look of someone doing the worst thing they have ever done and doing it correctly and knowing the cost of correct. Coward, Harry said. Not because he meant it. Because the situation required it. Required Snape to be seen as the murderer, the betrayer, and Harry providing the accusation was part of that requirement. Harry, who had 16 years of Snape, who could read the architecture, who knew. Snape's eyes, briefly, were not masked, just looked at Harry, and the message in the look was, I know. You know. Hold, Harry held. The hunt. The months of running. The tent, the forests, the Horcruxes falling one by one. Ron left once. Came back. Ron's departure and return was the specific shape of a person who had absorbed everything they could absorb from the locket, and who had needed a moment away, and who had, in the end, come back. Because coming back was the Ron Weasley move, and would always be. Hermione was the architecture of the hunt. The planning, the research, the specific intelligence that kept them alive in the margins of a war. Harry was the direction, the instinct for which way to move, the capacity to make the call when calls needed making. And Harry was the specific, unusual Harry that had been made by the specific, unusual household that had formed him. The patience was Snape's. The courage was Sirius's. The specific configuration of both, the ability to be patient about the things that required patience and courageous about the things that required courage, and the trained eye for telling the difference, that was both of them. And both of them were Harry. He thought about them. Often, not sentimentally, in the practical way of someone accessing training. What would Snape ask, and what would Sirius do? Were questions that had been running in Harry's mind since he was 7, and they ran through the hunt like a second dialogue track. What does the colour of the water tell you? Age 7, checking whether a stream was safe to cross. If it goes wrong in the next 10 seconds, what's the play? Sirius, age 9, teaching Harry to always have an exit. They got him through the forest, they got him through the Horcruxes, they got him to the end of the thing. The Battle of Hogwarts. Snape was here, had been here as headmaster, maintaining the school against the worst of what the Death Eaters wanted to do with it. The specific political navigation of someone who has been doing this for 20 years and who has gotten very good at appearing to give the powerful what they want while actually protecting the things that matter. Harry did not know this when he arrived. He knew when the school began to be itself again, when the teachers rallied and the Darrows and the specific atmosphere of this is not over. We are not done crystallized in the corridors and the Great Hall and the grounds. He found Snape. Not in the battle, before the worst of it, in the castle, in the moment that the story needed. Snape gave him the memories. Not because it was the plan, because the moment required it, because Harry was there, because the years of Thursday evenings and Wednesday editions and all the careful construction of a person who could receive this information and use it correctly had produced exactly this person, standing in exactly this corridor, requiring exactly this. The memories, Lily, the whole story, the Horcrux, what Dumbledore had known, what Harry had to do. Harry went to the Pensieve, came back, walked into the forest. He was not afraid of death the way people were afraid of death who had not been raised by someone who had survived Azkaban, and who had not been raised by someone who had spent 16 years studying exactly this mechanism of survival. The protection holds, Snape had said. I am certain. Harry was certain too. Not of survival exactly. Certainty about survival was overconfidence. Certainty about the mechanics. Certainty about what Lily had done and what it meant and what Snape had spent 16 years verifying. He walked into the forest and he was calm. The particular. Snape's structured calm of someone who has done the analysis and arrived at the conclusion and who is executing accordingly. He opened the snitch. The resurrection stone. His parents. Sirius, can you stay close? Harry said. Always, Sirius said. You know that. He walked on. Voldemort's curse hit him. The green light. The going. And the coming back. The specific strange white place between. And Dumbledore. And the choice. Go back or move on. And Harry chose back, which was the Harry move, which was the Sirius move in its particulars, and the Snape move in its reasoning. Go back, because there is still something to do, and because the people who love me are still there, and I am not done. He came back. The battle finished. The Great Hall, the morning. Harry stood in the aftermath and looked at the living and the dead, and felt the specific, complex, unmistakable quality of the end of the thing that had defined his life since the night it started. Voldemort was dead. The war was over. He went looking for Snape. Snape was not dead. He was in the hospital wing when Harry found him, 3 hours after the battle ended, alive in the specific, complicated way of someone who had been bitten by a magical serpent, and who had survived it by the narrowest possible margin because he had, years earlier, developed an anti-venin that was tailored to Nagini's specific venom because he had anticipated, with the careful strategic thinking of someone who knew Voldemort well, that the snake would eventually be directed at him. You prepared for this, Harry said, standing at the bedside. Obviously, Snape said. His voice was rougher than usual. The bite marks on his neck were bandaged. He looked, Harry thought, like a man who had survived a war, which he had. The anti-venin. Developed 3 years ago, when the Dark Lord acquired the snake. You didn't tell me. I told Dumbledore, Snape said. There was a chain of information and you were not at the end of it until now. Harry sat in the chair. He's dead. Yes, Snape said. I know. How does it feel? Like something that I have been working toward for 19 years has completed, Snape said. He was quiet for a moment. And like a great deal of other things. Simultaneously, Sirius, Harry said. Yes, among others. I saw him, Harry said, in the forest. The resurrection stone. He looked the way he looked at good days. At Grimmauld Place. The light-coloured days. Snape was very still. He told me, Harry said, that he never blamed you. Specifically, that he never blamed you for the specific thing you said to him when he called you. The word. That you were retaliating, and that retaliating with words was the least damaging option available, and that you were 17 and frightened. He told you that, Snape said, in the forest. Yes, Harry looked at him. He said it mattered to him that you were here, looking after me. He said it was what he would have wanted. Harry paused. He said it was good. The two of you, together, even though. Snape's face was doing the movement. More of it than Harry had ever seen. The full, uncontained version. He said that, Snape said. Yes, in the forest. When he was there, briefly, Harry held his gaze. I'm telling you what I saw. I know what the resurrection stone is, and I know the limits of it. But he said it, and I'm telling you because you should know. Snape was quiet for a long time. The hospital wing was quiet. Outside, somewhere, the castle was beginning the long process of repairing itself. Thank you, Snape said. He said it the way he said the truest things, without softening, without distance, directly. You're welcome, Harry said. They sat. The morning came properly through the windows, and the light was the kind that follows bad nights and means they are over. "What happens now?" Harry said. "You recover," Snape said. "You eat something adequate for the first time in what I suspect has been months. You attend to the people who are attending to you, which includes Weasley and Granger and the long-bottom boy who has been asking after you since 6 this morning. And you?" "I continue to recover," Snape said. "And then I don't know, I have had a defined function for 19 years. The defined function is completed. I don't know what comes next." "Thursdays?" Harry said. Snape looked at him. "You could still come on Thursdays," Harry said, "and Wednesdays, and whatever other days. Grimmauld Place is still—" He stopped. Started again. "Sirius left it to me, in the legal documentation. It's mine, and I want it to be what it's been." He paused. "What it was the best version of." "What was the best version?" Snape said. Harry thought about it. "The hour in the kitchen," he said. "When I was 7. When Sirius came home early and we were all 3 there. For an hour before you argued." Snape was quiet. "I remember that," he said. "I know you do. You remember everything." Harry looked at him. "That's what I want. That's what I want it to be. The 3 of us, or now the 2 of us, and the space where the 3rd one was. Which is not nothing. The space is not nothing." Snape looked at him for a long moment. The muscle movement was present. "Persistent, no," Snape said. "The space is not nothing." "Then come on Thursdays," Harry said. "Yes," Snape said. "And Wednesdays." "Yes," Snape said. "And sometimes when it's not scheduled because something is happening, and the schedule is—" "Harry?" "Yes?" "Yes," Snape said. "To all of it." "Yes." Harry sat in the chair beside the hospital bed, in the castle that had fought a war and survived it, and breathed. Both of them. Alive? It was enough. It was everything. It was the thing that the specific, unusual household of number 12 Grimmauld Place had been building toward since a night in November 1981, when 2 men who despised each other had looked at each other over the head of a screaming baby and had made the choice that changed all of them. After, years of after, Grimmauld Place became not repaired. Repair implies returning to a prior state. Grimmauld Place became what it had been becoming, slowly, since the day the curtain went over Walburga Black's portrait. Less dark, not deliberately, in the specific, organic way of a house that has been lived in by someone who loves it badly, and by someone who tends it precisely, and by the child they made between them. Metaphorically, legally, in the only senses that mattered. Harry trained as an aura. He was good at it in the specific way that he was good at most things, not the most naturally gifted, but the most prepared, the most thoughtful, the most capable of the specific synthesis of courage and structure that the job required. He came home to Grimmauld Place on Thursdays, and Wednesdays, and sometimes other days. Snape retired from Hogwarts the year Harry was 23. He cited a lack of patience for incoming student cohorts, which was what he always cited, and which was sometimes, but not always, the primary reason. He moved his library to Grimmauld Place first. This took 3 separate magical removals and produced an argument about the structural adequacy of the shelving that lasted a week, and that Harry mediated with the specific diplomatic skill of someone who had been doing this since before he had words for it. "The shelving is adequate," Harry said. "The shelving is ornamental," Snape said. "Structural adequacy requires—" "Snape, yes. Is this the shelving argument or the living here argument?" A pause. "The shelving argument," Snape said. "Are you sure?" Another pause. "Both," Snape said. "Simultaneously, and the living here question," Harry said, "has the answer that I thought it had." "Yes," Snape said. "Then the shelving is a secondary issue." The shelving remains structurally inadequate. We'll fix the shelving, Harry said. They fixed the shelving. Snape moved in. The library occupied what had been the formal dining room, which had previously been used for dining approximately once every 3 years, and which was better employed as a repository for approximately 8,000 books arranged in a system that only Snape fully understood and that Harry found navigable, and that Hermione, when she visited, spent a Friday afternoon reorganizing before being asked, with extreme precision, to stop. The motorbike stayed in the kitchen. This was non-negotiable. Snape had objected twice in the first year and had not objected again, which Harry understood as Snape arriving at the same conclusion he had arrived at, that the motorbike's presence in the kitchen was not a practical decision, and that practical decisions were not the only kind. The portrait of Wellburger Black continued to scream. The curtain remained. Occasionally the curtain fell off. They put it back. This was the system. Hermione and Ron visited every other Sunday. The visits were loud, because Ron was loud and Hermione's views on most things were expressed at the volume of someone who has very strong views on most things, and because Harry and Ron had not gotten quieter with age. Snape attended these visits with the expression of someone who is tolerating something and who is also, if you knew how to read the architecture, not entirely displeased to be tolerating it. Neville visited with Hannah, his wife. Their garden was in South Devon, and they were attempting to grow flobberworm-resistant herbs, which was apparently a specific challenge in the climate. And Harry had been receiving very detailed updates on the flobberworm situation for 3 years. Snape had, without being asked, sent Neville a monograph on flobberworm-resistant charm variants applied to magical herb cultivation. Neville had written back with such enthusiasm that Snape had written back in return, and the correspondence was ongoing, and Harry found it deeply and specifically satisfying. Luna visited when she was in England, which was irregular. She brought things, interesting plants from wherever she'd been, objects whose function she described with complete confidence, and that may or may not have had the functions she described. Snape assessed these objects with the expression of a scientist confronting pseudoscience, and then, occasionally conducted experiments. Harry suspected that he found Luna's collection more interesting than he was willing to admit. Sirius was gone. That fact remained. It did not get smaller exactly. Grief does not get smaller, but it became less central, as Snape had said it would, less organising. The space where Sirius had been was still present. The warmth that Sirius had filled the house with was present in the residue of every year they'd spent there. In the motorbike, in the curtain, in the shape of Harry's smile, which was sometimes Sirius's exact smile, and which Snape would occasionally observe with the particular Privet. Unannounced recognition of someone who sees the dead in the living. Harry noticed when this happened. He always noticed. He didn't say anything. He let Snape have the moment. That was the house. That was what they had made between them. The three of them, starting from a ruined cottage and an argument before the agreement, and 17 years of impossible, combustible, necessary partnership. That was the thing that the two most contrary men in the wizarding world had built by accident, or design, or some combination of the two that was impossible to separate. Harry sat in the kitchen on a Thursday evening with a cup of tea, and Snape was across the table with a journal he was annotating, and the motorbike was against the wall, and the light was the long gold light of summer in a house that had been a lot of things, and that was, right now, this, home. The most accurate word for it, and the one it had always been. Since the first Thursday evening, since the first argument about porridge, since the year in the cupboard den, with 2 sleeping bags and a torch, and the specific, unearned, enormous safety of being loved by the people who were arguing about you. Snape, Harry said. Snape looked up from his journal. Thank you, Harry said. For the tea? Snape said. You made the tea, Harry said. So yes, partly, Snape looked at him. You are thanking me for the tea, and the rest of it, Harry said. Everything after the tea. Snape was quiet. The muscle movement. The full version. You're welcome, Snape said. He said it the way he said the truest things. Then he went back to his journal. Harry drank his tea. The evening light moved. The motorbike didn't move. Some things stayed. Some people stayed. The people who stayed were not always the ones you expected, and they stayed in ways you could not always predict, and the staying was not always comfortable or quiet or without argument. But it was the staying. And the staying was the love. And the love, the specific, awkward, argued over, porridge adjacent, motorbike adjacent, curtain over Walburga Black adjacent love of two very different people trying their absolute hardest to do one impossible thing correctly, had been, from the first night in November to this Thursday in summer, entirely enough. There are spaces between the years. Let us fill them. The first Christmas. Harry was 2. They had been at Grimmauld Place for 13 months. The legal paperwork was finalised, the Visingamot had approved the arrangement, Dumbledore had expressed his considered view that this was either brilliant or catastrophic, and Sirius and Snape had spent a year discovering that the answer was both simultaneously. Christmas was Sirius's idea. The extent of Sirius's idea was Christmas. The details, the tree, the decorations, the food, the logistics of whether Snape was coming and if so why and under what auspices were left unaddressed until December 22nd, when Harry pointed at the corner of the sitting room and said, with the specific, unambiguous authority of a 2-year-old who has made a decision, "Tree? There's no tree," Sirius said. "Tree?" Harry said. Sirius went out and bought a tree. This required 2 hours, a motorbike, and the specific management of a tree on a motorbike, which Sirius resolved through a combination of magical engineering and what he described as positive thinking. The tree arrived. It was slightly too tall for the room. Sirius managed this by cutting the top, which was the Sirius solution, direct and irreversible. Snape arrived on Thursday as usual, looked at the tree, at the angle of the cut, at Sirius. "You cut the top," Snape said. "It was too tall," Sirius said. "The alternative was putting it in a taller room. This is the sitting room. The sitting room is where the tree goes. The sitting room has a 17-foot ceiling. I didn't measure the ceiling." Obviously, Harry, from the floor where he was examining a glass bauble with the intensity of a scientist examining an interesting specimen, looked up at both of them. "Tree?" he said, in the tone of someone bringing things back to relevant issues. "Yes," Snape said. He sat down on the floor beside Harry. He did this. Sat on the floor with the specific, slightly awkward manner of someone who does not sit on floors and who is doing it anyway because the relevant person is on the floor. This is what you wanted. "Tree?" Harry said again, holding up the bauble. "Yes," Snape said. "The tree. And the ball." "Bauble," Sirius said, from across the room, where he was hanging decorations with more enthusiasm than accuracy. "It's called a bauble." "Ball," Harry said. "Bauble," Snape said. "Ball," Harry said. "Both acceptable," Sirius said. "One is accurate," Snape said. "Ball," Harry said. He handed it to Snape with the particular, complete, trusting gesture of a very small child giving something to an adult they have decided to trust. Not a considered decision, an instinctive one. Snape looked at the bauble. It was red. It reflected both of them, Harry's small face, Snape's angular one. "Thank you," Snape said. "Ball?" Harry said, satisfied. The evening continued. Snape hung decorations in the places where the placement was correct. Sirius hung them in the places he wanted. The tree ended up with a bottom half that was organised, and a top half that was chaotic, and that was, Harry would later understand as an adult, an extremely accurate visual representation of the household. Molly Weasley sent a Christmas pudding because Molly Weasley sent Christmas pudding to everyone she had decided was family, and at some point in the previous year she had decided that Sirius and Snape and Harry constituted a family, which was either warmly inclusive or an indication that her definition of family was more expansive than most. Sirius made dinner. It was not good dinner. Sirius's cooking was enthusiastic and imprecise, but it was warm, and there was enough of it, and the table was set, and the candles were lit, and Harry sat in his high chair and ate the parts of dinner that were edible, with the focus of a child who has strong opinions about food. Snape looked at the table, at the candles, at Sirius, who was serving something that was technically a roast. "This is acceptable," Snape said. "High praise," Sirius said. "It is the accurate assessment." "Say Merry Christmas, Snape." "I don't. Just say it." "Merry Christmas," Snape said. He said it with the specific awkwardness of someone for whom the words were correct in principle and strange in practice. "Merry Christmas," Sirius said. Harry, who had been watching this exchange with the absolute attention of a 2-year-old who understands more than he can say, banged his spoon on his tray in what was clearly meant to be participation. "Merry Christmas," Harry said. It came out as 2 sounds. The sounds were close enough. They sat in the dining room of Grimmauld Place, with the black family silver on the table and Molly's pudding waiting on the sideboard and the tree with its 2-tier decorating philosophy visible through the door, and had Christmas dinner together, the 3 of them, for the first time. Not the last. The argument about Quidditch. Harry was 9. He had been flying for 4 years and was, by any objective measure, extraordinary in the air. The Potter gift, which Sirius had watched with such specific joy that every flying session produced the expression Harry categorized as Sirius remembering someone he loved. The argument was about tryouts. A local youth Quidditch team was accepting players up to age 12. Sirius wanted Harry to try out. Snape had a position on this. "He is 9 years old," Snape said. "He's a natural flyer," Sirius said. "He should be playing with kids his own age instead of just flying around the garden." The risks associated with competitive junior Quidditch are documented. Everything has risks. Some things have more risks than others. He's good, Snape. He's ready. The question is not whether he is ready, Snape said. The question is whether competitive Quidditch at age 9 produces outcomes commensurate with the risks. Harry, who had been listening to this from the hallway and who had learned over 9 years exactly when to enter an argument in progress and when to let it run, chose this moment to enter. "I want to try out," Harry said. Both of them looked at him. "I know I'm only 9, he said, "and I know there are risks. And I know Snape doesn't think the outcomes aren't commensurate, Snape said. Grammar? Aren't commensurate with the risks, Harry said. But I want to try. Can I try? Sirius said yes immediately. Snape said that Harry's desire to try was noted and that the decision required further consideration. Harry sat down at the table. What further consideration? Harry said. The risk calculus. What risks specifically? Harry said. Snape paused. He looked at Harry with the look he used when Harry had asked the right question, which was the look Harry liked best because it meant the conversation was about to get interesting. The specific impact risks associated with competitive play at high speed, Snape said. The social risks of competitive sports environments on children who are not unaccustomed to competition, Harry said, who are not accustomed to team dynamics. How do I learn team dynamics if I don't play in teams? Snape was quiet. The risk to not playing, Harry said, is that I don't learn things I can only learn from playing. That's also a risk. Sirius's expression was the expression of someone watching something magnificent happen. Your reasoning, Snape said, is sound, in broad strokes. The The specific comparative risk analysis would require, Snape, Sirius said. He made a good argument. He made a preliminary argument. He's 9. He has been in a household where rigorous argumentation is modelled. Snape stopped. He has, Harry said. Helpfully, Snape looked at him. The muscle movement. You may try out, Snape said, on the condition that you wear the full protective kit. Yes, Harry said, and that if you are injured, I'll tell you. Immediately. And that the social dynamics of the team environment do not become. Snape, Harry said. Yes, thank you. The pause. The movement. You're welcome, Snape said. Harry made the team. He was the best flyer by a significant margin, which produced social complexity that Snape had accurately predicted, and that Harry navigated with the specific tools of someone who had been navigating complex social dynamics since before he could articulate what he was doing. He brought home his first team photo, put it on the mantelpiece at Grimmauld Place. Sirius looked at it for a long time. You look like James, he said. On a broom, especially, Harry said. Yes, on a broom especially. Snape looked at the photo too. He did not say what he saw in it, but he did not look away from it for some time. The conversation about Lily. Harry was 12. He had known about his mother since he was old enough to ask, which was very young. He knew her name, and that she had been brilliant, and that she had loved him, and that she had died. He knew that Snape had been her friend, had known this for years, had assembled it from the specific quality of Snape's silences on the subject, the way Snape's voice changed its register when certain memories were adjacent. He sat across from Snape at the kitchen table on a Thursday evening with a copy of a Charms textbook between them and said, You loved her. Snape looked up from the textbook. He looked at Harry for a long moment. Yes, he said. As a friend? As a friend first, Snape said. And then as something more, which she did not reciprocate in the same way. But she was your friend. For a long time, Snape said. And then not. Because of the word, Harry said. Snape was quiet. I know about the word, Harry said. Sirius told me. He said you were angry and you lashed out and you said the worst thing available and it was the last thing between you. He said you tried to apologize. He told you that. He tells me things, Harry said, when he thinks I need to know them. He told me about the word when I was 10. He said it was important that I understood. Understood what? That people can be wrong in ways that cost them everything, Harry said, and that the costing doesn't stop because you were sorry. Snape looked at him. He said that? He said it's one of the things that stays with him because he made choices in the war that he was sorry about too, and being sorry didn't undo them. No, Snape said, it doesn't. Do you regret it? The word? Every day, Snape said, without qualification. Yes, she forgave you, Harry said. Didn't she? At some point, she forgave the person who said it, Snape said carefully. She did not restore what we had. Those are different things. I know, Harry said. Sirius told me that too. He said she forgave you because Lily's default was forgiveness, but that she couldn't trust you the same way after, because of who you were with, the people you spent time with. The Death Eaters, Snape said. Yes, she was right not to trust that, Snape said. She was, correct. Her assessment was accurate. You left them, Harry said. Eventually, Snape said. He looked at the textbook. Not soon enough. Harry sat with this. I think she'd be glad, he said, that you're here, looking after me. I think she'd be glad it was you. Snape looked at him. The expression was complicated in a way that Harry did not have the full vocabulary for yet, and that he spent several more years learning to read completely. I hope so, Snape said. It came out simply, without the architecture of deflection. I know so, Harry said. I know her from the stories, From what people have said, and I know she'd be glad." Snape did not speak for a moment. "Then, the switching spell," he said, returning to the textbook. "The specific movement requires the wand to describe an arc rather than a circle. Distinguish the arc." "It's a partial circle," Harry said. "Less than 180 degrees, but more than 90. More precisely, approximately 120 to 135 degrees, varying by the complexity of the switch." "Correct," Snape said. Again, Harry worked. The evening continued. The kitchen was warm. Later, when Harry was in bed, Snape sat in the kitchen alone for a while with a cup of tea he didn't drink, looking at nothing in particular. She'd be glad. He held that, carefully, the way he held most things that might be real, without pressing, without testing, just holding and letting it be what it was. The specific education Harry received. It was not a conventional education. It was the specific, layered, sometimes conflicting education of a boy raised by two people who had fundamentally different views about most things, but who agreed, without ever stating the agreement, that Harry should know as much as possible about as many things as possible. From Sirius, the history of the wizarding world as it was actually lived rather than as it was officially recorded. The marauders and the war and the people who had fought in it. The specific, irreverent, loving account of James and Lily as people, their failures and their jokes, and the things that made them extraordinary, and the things that made them ordinary. Quidditch, how to fly in weather, how to be afraid and do the thing anyway, how to tell the difference between brave and reckless section that Sirius acknowledged was important, and that he personally had not always managed. How to walk into a room full of strangers and make them feel that you had been looking for them. From Snape, the mechanics of the world. Not just magical mechanics, the logic that underpinned them. Why a potion does what it does, not just how. Why a charm has the specific design it has. The history of magical theory as a progressive conversation across centuries. Critical thinking as a practice. What does the evidence say? What does the evidence not say? What would need to be true for this to be true? How to be still when stillness is what the situation requires. How to observe without being observed. How to say exactly what you mean in fewer words than you think you need. From both, the specific education of someone growing up watching two very different people love the same child, which is the education in paradox. The understanding that two things can be true simultaneously, that courage is not the absence of fear, and that structure is not the absence of feeling, and that people who appear to be opposites are often addressing the same thing from different directions. Harry took all of this to Hogwarts and used it constantly. He could not have explained at 11 how the specific quality of his particular upbringing shaped him. But the shaping was visible in the way he assessed situations before entering them, in the way he held back in some moments and charged in others, and the way the moments were usually the right ones, in the way he spoke to people, with the warmth he'd learned from Sirius, and the directness he'd learned from Snape, and the specific, unusual combination of the two that was his own. Neville saw it earliest. Neville, who had been watching Harry since first year with the attention of someone who understood, from personal experience, what it meant to grow up in difficult circumstances, and who was learning, from Harry's example, what it could look like to come through those circumstances without being entirely defined by them. "You're not like other people," Neville said once, in fourth year. "No," Harry said. I mean that well. I know you do. How did you get like this?" Harry thought about the question. "I had good models," he said. "Imperfect, complicated, but good." Neville looked at him. "That's what I want," he said. "When I figure out who I am, I want good models." "You have them," Harry said. "Who?" "Me," Harry said. "Hermione, Ron." He paused. And whatever Snape has been doing with you on Wednesday evenings. Neville blinked. How do you know about Wednesday evenings? He mentioned it, Harry said. He doesn't mention things unless they matter. Sirius after Azkaban. The Dementor damage was something that Sirius talked about with Harry in the way that Sirius talked about hard things, directly, and with the specific black humour of someone who has decided that the alternative is silence, and that silence is worse. Some nights are bad, Sirius said. You know when the nights are bad. Yes, Harry said. And you don't. Sirius paused. You don't treat me differently on the bad nights. I noticed that. Why would I? Most people, when someone is visibly not well, most people either avoid them or manage them. You stay nearby and do normal things. Reading out loud or just being in the same room. That's what helped, Harry said. I worked it out early. The Dementor damage doesn't like noise. Not loud noise, that's worse. But the sound of someone talking. Something ordinary. Sirius looked at him. When did you figure that out? When you were having a bad night and I couldn't sleep and I started reading to you. You stopped, your breathing changed. So I kept doing it. How old were you? 5, Harry said. Sirius was quiet for a moment. You were 5 years old and you figured out how to manage Azkaban residue. I wasn't managing it, Harry said. I was just with you. The managing was accidental. That's not. Sirius stopped. Harry, yes, thank you. For all of it. For not treating me like something that needed handling. You didn't need handling, Harry said. You needed company. Sirius looked at him. Yes, he said. Yes, that's exactly right. Snape's birthday. Harry was 13 when he learned that Snape's birthday was January 9th. He learnt this from Sirius, who mentioned it with the specific neutral delivery of someone providing information they have complicated feelings about. He doesn't celebrate it, Sirius said. Why not? Because he doesn't. A pause. He never did. Even at school. The birthday was just a day. Harry thought about this. He thought about it for 3 weeks. Then, on January 9th, he made Snape a cup of tea. This was not a grand gesture. It was a cup of tea made exactly the way Snape liked it. Black, steeped for 4 minutes, in the specific mug that lived on the second shelf because Snape had opinions about mugs. He gave it to Snape when he arrived at Grimmauld Place that Thursday. Snape looked at the tea. At Harry. At the tea again. Happy birthday, Harry said. Snape was very still. It is not, he said, a notable occasion. Thursdays are notable occasions, Harry said. Thursdays happen whether or not they're your birthday. Your birthday happens on a Thursday this year. It's a notable Thursday. Snape looked at him. The logic of that is, your birthday, Harry said. Happy one. Snape took the tea, drank it, said nothing for a while. Thank you, he said. Eventually, you're welcome, Harry said. After that, every January 9th, Harry made Snape tea. It was not a large tradition. It did not involve cake or presents or the kind of celebration that Sirius would have organised with the enthusiasm of someone who had spent 12 years without celebrations and who consequently felt that celebrations were important and should be large. It was a cup of tea, the right temperature, the right steep, the right mug. It was, Harry understood as he got older, exactly the right size for what it was. The specific shape of their love. This is what would be hard to explain to anyone who had not been in the specific household that was Grimmauld Place under the guardianship of Sirius Black and Severus Snape. It was not a quiet love. It was not the soft, comfortable love of a well-matched family that agreed about things. It was loud and argumentative and frequently expressed primarily through disagreement, and it was, underneath all of that, the most complete love Harry had ever encountered. Because the love never stopped. That was the thing. The argument about porridge lasted 3 days, and the argument about Quidditch tryouts lasted 2 weeks. And there was a period in third year when Sirius and Snape did not speak to each other at all for a month because of something that had happened during the war that neither of them would explain, and that Harry had decided not to press because the not speaking resolved itself, and that pressing would have complicated the resolution. All of that, and underneath it, constant, the attention, the specific, uninterrupted, total attention of two people who had decided in the ruins of a cottage on an October night that the child in front of them was the most important thing in the world, and who had not, for a single day since, reconsidered. Harry grew up knowing this. Not in the way that children who are told they are loved know it, abstractly, verbally, as information conveyed through statement. Concretely, evidentially, in the porridge argument, which was about nutrition, in the Quidditch argument, which was about risk, in the Thursday evenings, which were about knowledge, in the bad nights, which were about presence, in the waiting at the bottom of the tower and the waiting at the hospital bed and the waiting in the atrium and all the other waitings that the years produced. The specific, total, unconditional waiting of people who were not going anywhere. That was the love. That was what it looked like when it took the form of two men who despised each other and who had agreed, before they could possibly have understood what they were agreeing to, that the child between them was worth whatever it cost. It cost a lot. It cost more than either of them had expected. It cost arguments and discomfort and the specific grinding work of two people who are fundamentally different, finding enough common ground to raise a child on. It also produced Harry James Potter, Gryffindor, Aura, Boy Who Lived, the specific, particular, thoroughly unusual human being who had been made by a Gryffindor's warmth, and a Slytherin's structure, and the 10,000 Thursdays, and the motorbike in the kitchen, and the curtain over Walburga Black's portrait, and the Christmas tree with 2 decorating philosophies, and the birthday cup of tea on January 9th. Not a perfect product, not a seamless one, a human one, marked by the household that made him the way all children are marked by the households that make them, with the flaws and the gifts and the specific indelible shape of having been loved in a particular way by particular people. Harry was marked by the love that argued, the love that never agreed about anything, and that agreed about him, always, completely, from the first night to the last. That was enough. That was everything. That was home. One more thread. The one about the partnership itself. The moment Sirius and Snape became something other than enemies happened on a Wednesday evening in November 1985, when Harry was 5 years old and very ill. Not mortally ill. The specific, dramatic illness of a small child encountering a significant magical reaction. His magic had been trying to process something. Some ambient enchantment left in the walls of Grimmauld Place by generations of Black family magic use. And the processing had not gone smoothly. And the result was a 5-year-old with a fever of 1 and 3 in the specific. Alarming quality of a child who has decided that the adults in the room are useless and is going to manage the situation himself. He needs pepper-up potion, Snape said. I have pepper-up, Sirius said. I already gave him pepper-up. Standard pepper-up will not address a magical reaction fever. The fever is not bacterial. The fever is the symptom of magic attempting to expel something that is not. Where is the potion I left last Thursday? In the cabinet. Which cabinet? The one in the kitchen. There are 4 cabinets in the kitchen. The one by the window. There are 2 cabinets by the window. The tall one. Sirius. Left tall one by the window. Snape went to the left tall cabinet by the window and retrieved the correct potion, a modified version of pepper-up that addressed magical reaction fevers specifically, which he had left the previous Thursday for exactly this scenario, which he had anticipated because the ambient magic in Grimmauld Place was well documented and its effect on young magical children was predictable. Harry accepted the potion without argument, which was itself data. Harry only accepted potions without argument when he felt bad enough that not arguing was the energy conservation decision. The fever broke in 20 minutes. Harry fell asleep. Sirius sat in the chair beside Harry's bed and looked at the sleeping child with the expression that Harry would not see until he was much older, but that was visible, right now, on the face of a man who has been frightened for 2 hours. Snape stood at the door. "He'll be fine," Snape said. "I know," Sirius said. "I knew when you gave him the potion. I could feel it working." He looked at Snape. "How did you know to have that specific potion prepared?" "Because the Black family wards are documented," Snape said, "and the effect on developing magical children is a known complication. I researched it after Harry's first week here. I've had the modified pepper-up prepared since he was 3 months old." Sirius stared at him. 3 months old. "The risk was present from 3 months," Snape said. "Preparation should precede the risk." Sirius looked at him for a long moment, then at Harry, then back. "Thank you," Sirius said. "It is what the situation requires," Snape said. "No," Sirius said, "not what the situation requires. What you chose to do. Thank you." Snape did not say "you're welcome." He went back to the kitchen and made tea. He made 2 cups, an action so small that its significance was easy to miss, and that Sirius, who noticed most things about people because Sirius was fundamentally a person, did not miss. He brought both cups to Harry's room, set one on the side table near Sirius, sat in the other chair. They sat in the same room, on the same side, and drank tea, and the child between them breathed steadily. That was the moment. Not dramatic, not a speech or a reconciliation or any of the formal architecture of people deciding to be different to each other. Just tea. In the same room. On the same side. It didn't fix anything. They still argued. They argued the next morning, in fact, about whether Harry should be allowed a sweet the day after a magical reaction fever. Snape said no. Sirius said it was a fruit sweet, which was practically medicinal. They argued for 20 minutes while Harry ate the sweet. But the argument was different. Underneath it, established the night before, in the quiet of 2 cups of tea in the same room, was something else. They were, whatever else they were, the same team. Sirius taught Harry to laugh. This sounds simple, and is the most complex thing in the list. Sirius's laugh was specific, full and loud, and arriving without warning. The laugh of someone who found things genuinely funny and could not find them genuinely funny quietly. He laughed at Harry's jokes when they were good, and at Harry's jokes when they were bad, and at himself constantly. With the specific, generous self-deprecation of someone who has had to learn to find their own failures funny because the alternative was not finding them funny at all. Harry's laugh, as he grew up, was Sirius's laugh. Same volume, same suddenness, same inability to be partial about it. Snape noted this with the expression of someone observing a developmental outcome they had not entirely anticipated, but could not object to. "Your laugh," Snape said once, when Harry was 9 and had laughed at something so completely that he had nearly fallen off his chair. "What about it?" Harry said, steadying himself. "It is, audible from considerable distances. Sirius's laugh is worse. Sirius's laugh has been a documented feature of this household since before you were born. So has mine now." Snape looked at him. "The movement." "Yes," he said, "so has yours." Snape did not laugh often. When he laughed, when something actually reached the mechanism, it was quiet and involuntary, and he usually interrupted it before it was fully formed. The laugh of someone who has not made peace with the fact of it. Harry had heard it 4 times by age 10. He collected those moments the way other children collected trading cards. The fifth time was when Harry was 11, a week before he left for Hogwarts. Sirius had made a joke, one of his better ones, the kind that required setup and timing and the specific irreverent intelligence that was Sirius at his best, and the joke had landed, and Snape's laugh arrived before he could interrupt it. It lasted approximately 2 seconds. Then, he stopped it. But those 2 seconds existed. Harry filed them under. The sounds that mean the house is working. Snape taught Harry to be still. Not physically. Harry was a physical person, all Potter instinct and Quidditch-trained reflex. The stillness Snape taught was interior, the specific practice of not moving the inside when the outside was moving fast. He taught it through occlumency, eventually, but the teaching started before occlumency, started when Harry was 7 and had come home from a bad day. The specific bad days of school that children have, where something has gone wrong socially, and the wrongness is not the kind that adults can address. Snape had found him in the kitchen. Not crying, Harry rarely cried, which was itself something Snape noted without pressing. Just sitting. What happened? Snape said. Jamie Beckett said I was weird, Harry said. In what respect? He said I talked like a grown-up and it was creepy. Snape sat down. Is he wrong? No, Harry said. Then his observation is accurate and his framing is imprecise, Snape said. The accurate observation is that you are articulate in ways that exceed your peer cohort's current capacity. This is a product of your education. It will become an advantage at a later stage. At the current stage, yes, you will encounter people who find it uncomfortable. That doesn't help, Harry said. No, Snape said. It doesn't. The uncomfortable feeling is still present. You are not wrong to feel it. Harry looked at him. So what do I do with it? Let it be there, Snape said. Don't fight it. Fighting it makes it larger. Let it be there in the place where uncomfortable feelings go and do something else while it is there. What else? Something that requires your focus, Snape said. Something that occupies the front of your mind so that the uncomfortable feeling has only the back of it. Harry thought about this. Something like potions? Or reading? Or flying? Something specific and absorbing. Does that work? It works with practice, Snape said. The first times, the feeling breaks through. Eventually it stays in the back until it is finished. How long does it take to get good at it? Years, Snape said. I have been practicing for 30 years and I am still not perfect. You seem perfect, Harry said. I seem controlled, Snape said. These are not the same thing. He looked at Harry. The feeling, in my case, is always there. The practice is what keeps it in the back. What feeling? Harry asked. He said it the way he asked things he actually wanted to know, directly, without preamble. Snape was quiet. Then, grief, he said. Various forms of it. Over various things. The specific texture of loss which does not entirely resolve. From my mum, Harry said. Among other things, Snape said. But yes, primarily they sat at the kitchen table, 7 and 37, the evening light. Does it help? Harry said, keeping it in the back. It makes other things possible, Snape said. Which is not the same as helping. But it is sufficient. I'll practice, Harry said. Yes, Snape said, you will. He did practice. Over years. The stillness became real, became the specific Snape-adjacent quality of Harry that coexisted with the Sirius-adjacent warmth, that allowed the warmth to be expressed without overwhelming the situation, that gave the courage something to stand on. Years after, as an aura, Harry's colleagues would describe him as someone who was warm and approachable and also entirely capable of being the most controlled person in a crisis. They could not explain how both were present in the same person. Harry never explained it. He just practiced, as he had been taught, and let the feelings go where they went, and kept the work in the front, and did what needed doing. This is the story. Not the famous version, not the boy who lived alone, the prophecy child, the hero. The other version. The version where Harry James Potter grew up in a house with too many arguments and a motorbike in the kitchen and the curtain over Walburga Black's portrait and the Thursday evenings and the birthday cup of tea. The version where the two people who should never have been in the same room were in the same room. Consistently. Because the child in the room was worth more to them than anything else, including the history between them. The version where love is not one thing. Where love is a specific, configured, architecturally unusual structure made of two very different people pointing in the same direction. And where the pointing doesn't require that they agree about the direction, or about each other, or about porridge, or Quidditch tryouts, or the left tall cabinet by the window. Just the direction. Just the child. Just we are doing this together. Because the alternative is not doing it at all, and not doing it is not an option. That was the household. That was the love. That was Harry Potter. All the different versions of him that grew up in that specific, impossible, combustible, completely real place. And the world, which had been waiting for the boy who lived to step into the shape it had prepared for him, got something more complicated and more complete. It got a boy who had been loved loudly and quietly, warmly and precisely, by two men who agreed about nothing, and who agreed about him. And the boy, formed in the disagreement, was exactly what was needed. Exactly what had been coming. Always